All right, welcome. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to hammer quite that high, That's better. I just got excited because my seatmate's in here, Delegate Rosenberg. Come on up. House Bill 1114. Yes. Looks like you have two witnesses here, so bring them both up.
Some familiar, at least one familiar face, I believe. Oh, no, he's not. He's in the background, as he used to be. Well, if I may, it's good timing, not just that we kept jockeying back and forth as to whether this would be first up today or not, but good timing that we're discussing this bill, which encourages people in our state to enter into public service at a time when we took action on the floor earlier today on a bill that seeks to, I don't want to reopen the discussion we had on the floor, but this is another example of encouraging Marylanders to enter public service by providing internships for students at schools, mostly in the state, during the academic year and during the summer, and providing a stipend because you're just not going to get paid the same amount working for the government as a student as you are going to a private sector position. We have several internships under existing law. There is the Janet Hoffman Loan Assistance Repayment Program, which is not an internship but related, provides help in repaying your debt, and is the first legislation along these lines that I got enacted. There is what was the William Donald Schaefer Program scholarship, which a certain law student who is now the Senate president took that class and took the internship. There are internships for lawyers, and the heart of the program is at UMBC, not surprisingly, and that's who's here to testify in support. What the bill would do is double the statutory number of internships, not for the current fiscal year. I used to be on this committee. I'm smarter than that. But starting in FY27. This is an essential part of creating, maintaining a sound state government, to have internships to give people an opportunity to enter into public service or nonprofit service. And the Shriver Center, named after Sergeant Shriver and his wife, Eunice, is the heart of the program, and they are here to provide details. So I would, looking forward, not for the current fiscal year, but looking forward, this is something that, obviously, with the governor who's got a commitment to public service, internships is an essential part of that, and that's why this bill is before you, and I would urge a favorable report. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. My name is Christina Kuglevicia-Brau, and I'm currently the program director of MPSS. I am also an alum of the program. I did it in 2013, and it really kickstarted my career. I want to thank Delegate Rosenberg for introducing the bill, and of course, for your passion and advocacy for public service throughout the years. So for the past 35 years, the Shriver Center at UMBC has run this program, this series of fellowship programs. They are a workforce development program that are designed to prepare students for careers in public service. This is very unique to Maryland, and it's a real high point that it's offered here. So during the Students' Fellowship, they complete 4 days of work as an intern at a local state agency or department or with a local nonprofit. They also complete a full day of professional development every Friday. And during that time, they get to hear from many different leaders throughout the state. They also complete either a final policy assignment or they complete a final nonprofit strategy paper. So this is a really holistic program overall that prepares them for these careers. Over the course of the program, 1,300 fellows have delivered over 524,000 hours of service to 118 nonprofits, 50 state departments and agencies, and a variety of federal and local entities. These numbers are impressive, of course, but we can do a lot more, and there's interest in doing a lot more. This year alone, we had 270 applications for just over 30 slots for the students. This just shows that there are many young Marylanders who are really eager to get engaged with public service and want the opportunity to do so. We've also every year had to turn down sites because we've had many more host sites apply than there's space. We have the ability to be able to support many more students and many more sites with your investment, of course. So for this reason, I am urging you to please vote favorable for HB 1114. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and the members of the committee for your time today. My name is Brandon Ubel. I'm a senior at the University of Baltimore, studying psychology, economics, and public policy. I'm honored to testify in support of HB 1114 with the amendments that have been sponsored by Delegate Rosenberg. I spent this past summer as a Governor's Summer Internship Fellow, and I was selected to intern in the office of Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller as a mentee under Mike Thomas, who served as the policy director. This placement would turn out to fundamentally change my outlook on the world and has led me on a path to pursuing full-time public service positions in the state that I call home. With Monday through Thursdays assigned to our internship sites, our program would meet on Fridays for seminars that developed our abilities to work in professional settings, manage and track various projects, while some days were designed for us to bond with the cohort through team building exercises and volunteer opportunities. In addition to the daily contributions to our host site, we are required to engage in a long-term project and draft a policy proposal, which were presented to the governor and lieutenant governor at the closing ceremony in August. My personal experience with the MPSS program was remarkable, as I was given the opportunity to work with the immensely talented team that is the lieutenant governor's office. Over the course of the summer, I developed the organizational skills necessary to work in an executive office, provided administrative support to the team, and managed logistics and staffed the lieutenant governor at various events and meetings. For my long-term project, I organized and led a roundtable discussion to understand the factors contributing to the migration of college students out of Maryland once they graduate. This roundtable discussion brought together members of the MPSS program with the lieutenant governor, directors, and assistant secretaries from the Department of Labor, Commerce, Housing and Community Development, and the Maryland Higher Education Commission. After the MPSS program ended in August, I was able to use the connections and experience that I gained to extend my internship with the Lieutenant Governor's office as a next-gen leader for public service through the Schaefer Center at the University of Baltimore. I urge a favorable vote on HB 1114, as it will continue to inspire and invest in public servants across the state who bring creative solutions to the problems that Maryland faces. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations on your success. Questions for the bill sponsor, Delegate McComas?
I'm trying to redeem myself for this morning. Delegate Rosenberg.
Sometimes there's a saying, quit while you're ahead, but I don't.
Okay, anyway. My question to you, Delegate Rosenberg, is I assume your office does delegate scholarships, correct?
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay.
I give the money back so that it can supplement what's in the budget
okay.
for
Well,
the Janet Huffman
all
Loan
right.
Assistance
Okay,
Repayment
well,
Program.
some of us do delegate and senatorial scholarships, and I was wondering if you would find a friendly amendment that a portion could be given to folks that want to go through these internship programs, $500 or $1,000, because we give them to folks that are doing graduate work, also college work, trade work, whatever. So would that be something you might find amenable to be amended to your bill, that could be a possibility? You would have to work with MHEC to make sure they're good with it. But, the idea, that would help encourage, because, we're public servants. We want to help the cause.
Oh, anything that gets more people into public service, and it sounds like that would help do that, I'm be all for it.
So you would be amenable. So could you follow up maybe with MHEC and see if they want to do that? Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good day. Okay. We have a baby bond bill here, is that right? Delegate, our baby delegate has a baby bond bill. So. Delegate Edelson, 753.
Can I bring up my baby panel, Mr. Chair? You can come up.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, distinguished members of what I was about to deem the best committee in the House, but I'm about to change my mind on that. For the record, I'm Delegate Mark Edelson presenting HB 753. This is to have the comptroller do a study on a baby bond account program in the state of Maryland. As noted, this bill would require the state's comptroller to submit a report on the feasibility of a baby bonds program in Maryland. The baby bond program would set up a trust fund for children born in poverty that is funded and managed by the state until the child reaches the age of maturity. The idea behind such a program is to do everything that we can to even the playing field for young people in our state. These kinds of programs build generational wealth, promote the pursuit of higher education, and home ownership. The following states either have such a program on the books or are actively considering one: New Jersey, Iowa, Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and DC. In 2022, the comptroller put out a relatively rudimentary report in response to a JCR request, Joint Chairman's Report request on baby bonds. And while that report is helpful, it does not capture the totality of the impact that baby bonds will have on the Maryland population or on our economy. It also does not address the real undergirding approach of implementation, or probably most importantly, how to fund such a program. In my district in Baltimore City, and across the state in all of our jurisdictions, we have children living in poverty that could use a leg up as they enter adulthood. I believe a baby bond program would help lift our children out of poverty, but also help stimulate our economy. That being said, recognizing our current financial position, I think it would be wise to fully analyze this program before embarking on such an endeavor. I would note that since this study would be conducted by the comptroller, there's no fiscal note associated with passage of this bill. For these reasons, I would urge a favorable report on HB 753, and we'll turn it over to my panel and then take questions.
Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this bill. My name is Jordan Holden, and I'm a policy associate at the Cash Campaign of Maryland. Cash stands for Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope, and we promote economic advancement for low to moderate income individuals and families in Baltimore and across Maryland. More than half of our clients earn less than $20,000 a year, with many of them earning just less than $10,000. As staff to the Financial Education and Capability Commission, which is co-chaired by Delegate Stein and Senator Brooks, we have worked to advance baby bonds and formally recommended them to the General Assembly in the Commission's 2021 report. Baby bonds are a powerful tool for wealth building and are designed to give children born into low-income families a financial foundation that they can access once they turn 18, and then be able to use these to fund opportunities such as higher education, home ownership, or starting a business, all of which we know are key avenues for breaking cycles of generational poverty and fostering long-term financial stability. For many years, Cash has organized legislators to map out what a baby bonds program could look like in Maryland. During the 2021 session, one of your colleagues sponsored a bill that would have created a baby bonds program in Maryland, but the bill was withdrawn so that we had time to work on some things that needed to be figured out, which is why we need this study. Governor Moore has also expressed his support for baby bonds, reinforcing the state's commitment to exploring solutions that address longstanding economic disparities. This study is a necessary step to ensure that Maryland's baby bonds program is effective, sustainable, and financially feasible for the state. This bill would allow us to examine best practices from other states and develop a structure that could ensure the program's longevity. A well-planned baby bonds program would give young adults a start at their life with capital to invest in their futures. By providing a foundation for such an important stage in a young adult's life, baby bonds can help close Maryland's racial wealth gap and create a more equitable economy for future generations. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 753.
Thanks. Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. Good afternoon. I'm Darius Graham, and I'm here today on behalf of the Greater Washington Community Foundation to request a favorable report on HB 753, the Baby Bond Account Study Bill. As wealth inequality persists throughout our state and our country, baby bonds are a clear pathway to help Maryland children enter adulthood with financial resources to achieve their dreams and contribute to Maryland's economy. The concept of baby bonds, which are also known as children's savings accounts, is simple. Children are enrolled and receive a one-time deposit or annual deposits into an account administered by a government or a third party. Once the child reaches adulthood or meets certain conditions, such as graduating from high school, the funds can then be used to pay for higher education, to purchase a home, entrepreneurship, three of the most proven ways to build wealth in this country. As the panelists stated, baby bonds programs have been studied or implemented across the country at the state and local level. That includes a similar pilot program right here in Maryland called Brilliant Futures. Last year, the Greater Washington Community Foundation and our partners launched Brilliant Futures to help close persistent wealth gaps. Up to 400 students in Prince George's County and Montgomery County are participating in this pilot program, which provides kindergartners with an initial deposit of $1,000 and up to $1,000 each year through 12th grade. Once the student graduates from high school, they can use the funds, approximately $13,000, for education, homeownership, entrepreneurship, or some other wealth-building activity. If enacted, HB 753 would be a step toward making a program like Brilliant Futures available to children across Maryland. By studying the feasibility of such a program at the statewide level, exploring potential funding sources, and measuring the likely positive impacts on key economic indicators. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony and advocacy. Questions for the bill sponsor or the panel? Okay, we do have one more witness, but Delegate, in seriousness, thanks for bringing this good idea in front of us. Thanks for your advocacy. Yes, sir, come on up. Matthew Dudzik. There you are.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Matt Dudzik here on behalf of Comptroller Brooke Learman, who unfortunately could not be here today. Since taking office, one of our comptroller's stated goals has been to leverage the resources and expertise of the Office of the Comptroller to create reports that can help inform policy decisions. We've done this with our State of the Economy report, as well as with a number of follow-up briefs on topics such as immigration and childcare. So I believe that the Office of the Comptroller is well positioned to take on the study proposed under HB 753 regarding baby bonds. We also wouldn't be starting from scratch. Our office has done, as the delegate mentioned, a previous report on the issue back in 2022. And since then, we also have several years of new data to look at from California, Connecticut, and DC, all of which have implemented baby bonds or similar proposals. Basically, all of this is to say that the comptroller is confident that we can take on the study that Delegate Edelson is proposing with existing resources. And it is a really valuable topic to explore because baby bonds potentially address one of the core issues with economic inequality, which is the difference between wealth and income. A lot of proposals focus very heavily on the latter. But for example, if you look at data regarding the racial wealth gap versus the racial income gap, you'll see that the racial wealth gap is approximately 3 times as large as the racial income gap. And it's an important distinction because lack of access to capital and savings can have cascading consequences in other areas, such as the ability to purchase a home or get a loan or start a business. Thank you for your time, and the comptroller urges a favorable report on HB 753.
Questions for the comptroller? House Bill 840, Delegate McCaskill. And
Good afternoon. For the record, I am Delegate Alethea McCaskill. Mr. Chair, I must say, I look at the lineup today and I see that your staff did a wonderful job of keeping to the baby theme and the education theme. So as we continue, so I am just urging a strong passage for public senior higher education institution for pregnant and parenting students, which is HB 840. Exciting news. It passed this committee last session unanimously. And due to the dynamics of sine die, it didn't make it to the House floor vote. So I'll elaborate just a little, only because McComas may have some questions. So HB 840 requires certain public senior high education institutions to adopt a policy regarding pregnant and parenting students. The policy requests that higher education institutions offer pregnant and parenting students referrals for on or off-campus services for certain government assistance programs, adoption services, institutional accommodations, and health care. The higher institution will post the plan on its institution's website before July 1st, 2026. And it's consistent with Title IX, and it includes elements using existing resources. This bill supports the federal civil rights law and Title IX of Education Amendments of 1972, which protects people from discrimination or denial of benefits in education programs that receive federal financial assistance. Please keep in mind that this bill is to support students who are already parents and for those parents of all genders who are expecting. This bill is not to act as Planned Parenthood. However, the goal in this policy are to let students know about programs that can support them while they are pursuing their college degrees. HB 840 will inform these students of subsidies that they and their children may qualify for. Programs such as SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for Women, Infant, and Children, the Child Care Scholarship Program, and MCHIP, Maryland Children Health Insurance Program. Also, academic accommodations if needed, and other programs for scholarships. There are several factors in college dropouts for young women, and please keep these factors in mind. 1 in 10 female students who drop out of community colleges is due to unplanned pregnancies. More than 60% of public colleges do not list lactation spaces for breastfeeding mothers. This includes colleges that offer on-campus childcare. Less than 2% of teen mothers who have a baby before the age of 18 don't finish their degree by age 30. More than 2 million women between the ages of 18 and 24 become pregnant each year, and 26% of those women are women in college. Becoming pregnant or becoming a parent while in school can pose significant challenges to students' academic success, and knowing what support is available could deter them from dropping out. Students who find themselves becoming parents may not have enough time to study, and a lack of affordable child care or high tuition costs could jeopardize them and their children's future. Nonetheless, it can give families more opportunities to become a part of our workforce and be less dependent on state government services. This bill can support students in securing their commitment to bridge their financial gap. Now, as far as the opposition goes, you will hear from more than likely Maryland's Right to Life to testify against HB 840. But please keep in mind that it's designed not to promote abortion. It is an assessment that I wholeheartedly disagree. In fact, I would think that they would be fully on board since the purpose is mentioned right in the title. With this bill, one would have to be pregnant, seeking support services, or parenting, meaning that a child already is present. And even more, the Maryland Catholic Conference submitted favorable testimony for this bill. For these reasons, Mr. Chair, I mentioned previously, and because Maryland continued to make efforts to support families, I please urge you to give a favorable report to HB 840.
Questions for Delegate McCaskill? Delegate Metzger.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to get direct to the question.
Appreciate it.
since you're offering support,
Yes.
would it be able to let that pregnant young person have a sonogram to give her a real different option, since it's not for abortion, but maybe give that child up to an adoption so that people that are looking for a baby could have that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, it's absolutely possible. Are you asking for an amendment,
Yes.
perhaps?
Yes.
Okay, well, we can discuss that. I would love to speak to you about it.
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Delegate McCaskill.
All right.
We do have a Laura Bogley. Laura Bogley. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes and members of the committee. I'm Laura Bogley, and I am in fact here for Maryland Right to Life to urge your unfavorable report on this bill. We do agree with the bill's sponsor that the state has a duty to better support pregnant students so they are not coerced into choosing between their education and the life of their children. However, this bill is not narrowly tailored to ensure equal accommodation for students who want life-saving alternatives to abortion, and therefore we must oppose it. Maryland Right to Life has been consistent in our position that we cannot support any bill that would expand abortion in our schools by codifying federal Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. Rules attached to Title IX since 1975 have required federally funded schools or colleges to provide students equal accommodation for pregnancy or abortion. And one important difference to note in this bill is that Title IX prohibits discrimination based on biological sex. This bill attempts to change that to gender, which, as we know from all of the bills that you've been fighting with the Title IX and the girls' sports, that gender is not the same as biological sex. And far from being neutral on the issue of abortion, the state has given the abortion industry a monopoly on student reproductive health. In fact, in 2023, the Assembly enacted a law to require all colleges to coordinate abortion services on and off campus. And when an amendment was introduced to require equal accommodation for alternatives to abortion as required by federal Title IX, the Assembly flatly rejected it. Pregnant students do face tremendous pressure to abort their children, and much of that pressure is applied by the profit-minded abortion industry, which this bill could refer them to. They're invested in unplanned pregnancies, and now they are entrenched on our college campuses, in large part due to the Title IX regulations.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? Okay, Delegate McComas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's happening with the sonogram for the, I guess it's Health and Government Operations, do you know?
I'm sorry, Delegate McComas, the bill
Let's stick it to the bill, what we have on the bill. So if you have questions about all the wonderful support services for children and mothers, ask about that.
If the sponsor would allow you an amendment to put the fetal heartbeat into this bill, would you support it then?
Absolutely not. We will not support the codification of federal Title IX that requires abortion accommodation on campus. And because we're here in APR, that means attach funding for that.
So there's no compromise here. It's either or.
We're happy to work with the bill sponsor to actually have this bill do what it says it wants to do, which is to give pregnant women support for choosing life for their children. We've offered that year over year. We're very happy to work with the sponsor so that the bill actually accomplishes that goal without codifying Title IX. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions for this witness? All right, that concludes the bill hearing.
Thank you.
House Bill 1254, Delegate Plavich-Carr.
Mr. Chair, would it be okay for my panel?
Of course, please do.
To join?
Yep.
Good afternoon, committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 1254. And this bill has a technical sounding title, but the idea is really simple. We're advocating for more kids to get free breakfast and lunch at school at no cost to themselves or to their families. We know that hungry kids don't learn well. Decades of research show that hunger negatively affects student attendance, academic achievement, behavior, and mental health. And I think some of us probably also understand this from personal experience because maybe we skipped lunch today and are struggling to perform at our best. We are making important investments in our students and public education through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, but those investments won't reach their full potential when kids are hungry. And that's unfortunately the case for far too many children. Here in Maryland, 1 in 6 kids face hunger on a daily basis. 1 in 6. And these kids live across our state. Even in counties and communities that we might view as affluent, there are students who come to school who have not had breakfast and who can't afford to have lunch. And many of these kids are from working families who have an income that is too high under our guidelines to qualify for free lunch. And for example, for a family of 4, the income cutoff is about $57,000. That is not a livable wage for a family of 4 anywhere in our state, according to our self-sufficiency standards. The solution is universal free school meals. We did it nationally during the pandemic, and 8 states are still providing free school meals to all students. We do not currently have universal free school meals in Maryland, but we have been making progress, and that's thanks in a large part due to the work of this committee. We've also seen major progress because of a federal program that supports high poverty schools and feeding all kids free breakfast and lunch. That's the Community Eligibility Program. In Maryland, more than 670 schools across 19 counties participate in this federal program, and that reaches about 370,000 kids each year. Because of this federal program, several of our school districts across the state are able to provide free school meals to all students. But unfortunately, we are leaving federal money on the table. There are many more Maryland schools that qualify for federal funding but need some state matching dollars in order to afford to participate. HB 1254 would mandate $10 million in annual funding, which would enable about 200 additional schools to provide free breakfast and lunch to more than 90,000 additional students across the state. The bill would prioritize schools with the highest concentrations of poverty while being mindful of geographic diversity. And with this funding, we could cut in half the number of public schools that don't offer universal free school meals, but that do qualify for federal funding. So this bill really is about unlocking those federal funds with matching state dollars. HB 1254 would be a significant step forward towards universal free school meals. There's been a robust group of stakeholders who have been working for years towards that goal. But to be frank, the cost has been the barrier, and we are very mindful of the state's current fiscal situation. So we've come in with this much narrower bill this year. And I don't need to tell this committee that $10 million is still a lot of money, especially this year. But please know that there is a funding mechanism. There's a bill that's going to be heard in Ways and Means tomorrow. So in conclusion, this bill would make meaningful progress in feeding hungry children and improving their academic progress while also maximizing our use of available federal funding. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Can I just ask, can I have a little more information on the funding mechanism?
There is a bill that is sponsored by Delegate Shetty.
Okay, what is it? I mean, what is it?
Sugary beverage tax.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay. I thought it was something specific to, got it.
No, it's the For Our Kids Act. It would fund the entire program and is estimated to bring in $500 million with $189 million dedicated to school meals, though this would be a significant increase as well.
Got it. I'm sorry to interrupt. We can continue with the witnesses. You can start.
All right. Thank you, Chair Barnes. And for the record, my name is Laura Hale. I'm the Director of Government Relations with the American Heart Association. We really see the access to school meals as really essential for the health of our kids. The school meals that we see are actually the healthiest meals that most kids eat in a day. If you're thinking back to the pizzas you see, when you see a pizza at school meals or anything like that, it's not what you think about. It's actually extremely well balanced, has really great nutritional standards, and we know these are really important. Another great thing is research out of Hopkins has demonstrated that free school meals is actually a protective factor for our children and families in the state of making sure that people don't slip further into poverty, or for our middle class not to slip further into poverty when we offer free school meals to every student across the state. We really, truly believe that this will make a difference in being what we want to see for Maryland. Healthy kids, fed kids that are learning well in school. We know the data is there, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. My name is Ann Wallerstedt. I'm the Vice President of Government Relations and Strategic Initiatives with the Maryland Food Bank. The Maryland Food Bank completely understands the budget constraints that the state is facing right now, but I'd really be remiss if I couldn't just paint a picture and show the landscape of hunger and how a bill like this could really help us in the state. So food insecurity numbers have not subsided since the pandemic. And actually, one of the top factors right now that's leading to food insecurity is financial instability. And that's actually gone up since the pandemic. I've put in a ton of stats and citations in my written testimony, but I do just want to highlight that almost 1 in 3 Maryland families have self-reported that their children are not eating enough because food is unaffordable. And we also can corroborate that anecdotally with the 185 food pantries that we help operate in schools all across the state. Feeding kids in school obviously is a tangible, immediate way to attack childhood hunger, and it's also going to help with these household budgets if we take that little bit out from there. Families with children we know are a population that are at greater risk for food insecurity, and this bill just frankly, tangibly would help that. I thank my delegate for putting forward this bill and for being an advocate for us. And I see Delegate McCaskill over there, who's the food bank's delegate, and we appreciate her support as well. So for these reasons, the Maryland Food Bank strongly supports this and would ask for a favorable report. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Julia Gross. I'm the Senior Associate for Child Nutrition Programs at Maryland Hunger Solutions. At Maryland Hunger Solutions, we work statewide to help end food security in Maryland by building sustainable and meaningful connections between residents and the nutritious foods they need to thrive. One of the key ways we do that is making connections to our federal nutrition programs like SNAP, WIC, and school meals, which is an incredibly massive safety net program for our families. There are hundreds of thousands of children in Maryland that are fed every single day because of these programs. They are a critical part of our food system and our first line of defense against childhood food insecurity. I also submitted some pretty extensive written testimony, so I'll keep my remarks short. But I did want to emphasize 3 things. The first being that today, there are kids in Maryland who are not going to get a meal in school. And whether that's because they can't afford it or they're facing stigma, those kids are going hungry in our classrooms. The second is there are food nutrition service departments out there that are going into debt to try to solve this problem. We've spoken to some professionals in that field saying that school meal debt has ballooned to 3 to 4 times what they have seen prior to the pandemic. And that not only impacts operations and the families involved, but often our school education funding too. And then the third, as a state, we have made progress on this. As it was mentioned before, we've made investments in these programs before and made critical steps forward. And so what we're asking today is to make one more meaningful step forward by supporting the community eligibility provision and the schools that are choosing to opt into it to support these kids, because our kids can't wait. Thank you.
Questions for the bill sponsor or panel? Well, let me thank the panelists for your advocacy and the work you do. Sorry, Delegate. Delegate Forbes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Polokovich-Carr, for bringing this bill. In Baltimore County in 2016, we did a pilot with 4 CEP schools, and in 2020, we came on board with about 70, and in 2023, all of our schools are now CEP schools. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in a day for students, like what they have access to because of the CEP program?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, there are kids in Maryland not receiving meals and districts going into debt. The only districts and schools that don't have that issue are the CEP schools that provide a breakfast and lunch at no cost for all of their students. So every time a child comes into a CEP school, they are guaranteed to have access to a healthy breakfast and a healthy lunch during that day. So it smooths out operations. They no longer have to deal with, money at the cafeteria line. It helps the line move faster, and it makes sure that all kids have equal access. So there's no more stigma, no more meal debt, and they just have access to healthy foods.
Any other questions? Delegate, I want to thank you for the bill. And also I want to thank you for, having the courage to put your own self out there on very significant revenue bills. I think that goes a long way when you have a significant fiscal note bill that the delegate themselves is willing to have the courage to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one more virtual witness. Elizabeth, welcome. 2 minutes. Thank you. There you go. You can start.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in favor of House Bill 1254. My name is Elizabeth Davis. I'm a pediatric resident physician at Children's National Hospital and a constituent from Montgomery County. Every day I meet Maryland children and their families. When they sit down in my office, we talk about what medical conditions they have, what they eat daily, how they do in school, and their dreams for the future. Discussions about nutrition are familiar to every pediatrician. According to the CDC, only 1 in 4 Maryland children in the last week ate a daily fruit and less than half ate a daily vegetable. These statistics are even more striking in families with food insecurity. In our practice, nearly 40% of our families screen positive for food insecurity. One of the most important things I can do to protect my patients' health is to ensure that they're eating well-balanced, nutritious diets that help stimulate brain development and reduce the risk of chronic medical conditions. When I ask parents and caregivers to identify barriers to healthy eating, nearly every single person says it's the cost. The historic increase in food prices we've all experienced hurts families, especially those already struggling with food insecurity. Data so far has suggested that the Community Eligibility Provision Program can help reduce obesity, increase school attendance, and improve behavior and school performance. For pediatricians, these outcomes make perfect sense, but there's still work to be done to ensure Maryland school districts that serve large numbers of low-income students can afford to provide wholesome meals to all students free of charge. House Bill 1254 would help fill that gap. The Community Eligibility Provision Expansion Program would provide additional funding to schools serving students at the highest risk of food insecurity. And in doing so, Maryland would be taking a step towards ensuring all its children are well-fed and well-nourished. One of the greatest gifts of my work as a pediatrician is hearing my patients' success stories. I know that with the passage of House Bill 1254, I'll hear even more. Children growing up healthy, strong, and excelling in school. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Davis, for joining us virtually. Are there any questions from members of the committee for Dr. Davis? Okay, great. Thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1254. The committee will now move on to House Bill 1138, Delegate Fair, Higher Education, Private Career Schools Advertising. Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you're okay, I'm going to have MHEC join us. We've compromised on an amendment, and now they're favorable, I believe, with the bill. Mr. Chair and esteemed members of the Appropriations Committee, for the record, Delegate Chris Fair presenting House Bill 1138. This bill seeks to enable qualifying private career schools to advertise slightly ahead of their official opening date after meeting certain criteria and only with the Maryland Higher Education Commission's explicit approval. To guarantee robust consumer protections for students, schools that receive approval to advertise under this legislation are not allowed to enroll or accept any payments or funds from prospective students. The bill allows private career schools to request to begin advertising before receiving their final certificate of approval, but only when they have conducted a market survey, secured a location for the school, completed necessary building modifications, obtained required equipment and permits, are likely to receive approval from the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and have received explicit authorization from the Secretary to begin advertising. The legislation is necessary to codify the unwritten administrative processes at MHEC currently employs so that private career schools can open, operate, and plan their activities with sufficient clarity. Schools' inability to advertise before opening means that they must fully open before recruiting any students, incurring weeks of potentially months of full operating costs and associated revenue from full operating levels of students. Without associated revenue from full operating levels of students. Those costs amount to an unnecessary financial barrier for Maryland educational institutions offering alternative career pathways like allied health, cosmetology and barbering, real estate, and mechanics, to name a few. This barrier could be alleviated if schools are able to enroll students closer to their opening dates, which would require them to identify and communicate their existence and services with prospective students beforehand through advertising. Finally, I'm grateful for MHEC's collaboration on this legislation and accept its proposed amendment as friendly. With MX guidance, I am confident that this bill strikes the appropriate balance between robust student protections and regulatory reform to make opening and operating a private career school less burdensome, ultimately giving students more opportunities to pursue alternative career paths. For these reasons, I urge the committee to give HB 1138 a favorable report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions from members of the committee for Delegate Fair? Mr. Coley with the Maryland Higher Education Commission providing
Chair
testimony.
Chang, thank you. Committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Delegate Fair, thank you for this bill, recognizing the commitment regarding work, wages, and wealth for the Governor Moore administration. Career schools are an integral component of higher education, post-secondary education in the state of Maryland. Thank you for accepting our amendment. And with that, we'd like to move our written testimony from unfavorable to favorable. Chair Chang.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coley. Are there any questions? Delegate Mangione.
Thank you. And it sounds like a great bill. To me, it just kind of, because at first I saw the opposition, so it sounds like you have the agreement here. It's kind of just like a movie preview, so to speak, where you're not going to have the movie start, say, April 1st, and when you can preview it for 2 or 3 months to let people get excited about it. So you're telling me now these schools, until they get that license or whatever it was, they cannot even try to market to students, potential students.
Correct. That's okay. And schools specifically brought this issue to our attention, that they basically are holding the water for all these operating costs, and they have no way until they get that final COA to actually begin and open the school physically. They cannot begin advertising to students, so they have to actually be at open before they can start advertising.
That sounds like a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Delegate Mangione. Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, great. Thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1138. The committee will now move on to House Bill 1436. Delegate Miller, Public School Construction Projections and Funding Inflationary Adjustments.
He probably likes one of my bills. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, my esteemed colleagues on appropriations. I am Delegate Miller, and I am here to ask for your favorable report on House Bill 1436. This bill is a first step in addressing the shortages induced in capital funding when we are not adjusting by CCI, the construction cost of inflation. Schools, just like homes, cost more to build, and they are trying to fulfill capital needs with no adjustment for inflation. In 2020, the cost for building a school without site development was $329 a square foot. In 2025, it is now $416 a square foot. Yet we did not adjust the funding for schools in our capital budget. This is a 26.44% increase. We will not be able to build as many schools or have fewer improvements or additions. The average cost of a high school is now over $150 million. My county alone will need 1 new high school and to replace or significantly renovate 3 others, plus our Career and Tech Center. And as the fastest growing county in the state, we are constantly battling repairing our aging infrastructure and building seats for growth. Built to Learn funding has helped, and the IAC has been very supportive, but they only have limited funds. FCPS has done an amazing job taking care of our buildings and planning for the future. We had our work group this interim to even look at creative solutions to fund our school construction. And while this solution may not be creative, it is absolutely imperative to make these adjustments. The blueprint does have an impact on capital expenditures. We are asking schools to do collaborative time. And in my county, we still have several open schools, and the open school concept, with those classrooms 100% way over capacity, we don't have time to implement, or we don't have the space to implement collaborative time as it's designed. We don't have pull-out rooms. We don't have areas where there can be separate tutoring or actually any kind of separate breakout room where staff can get together and have those meaningful discussions about a data-driven instruction mindset and how they're going to help students. We literally don't have the space. And I would go to do parent usually career day, and I would have to lower my voice because of all of the impact on the classrooms around us with open space schools, which only have the partitions in between them. So it's a real problem as far as not just our teacher shortage, but literally the capital constraints that are going to be need to be addressed, and this is one way that we can address it. The other part that it has, of course, an impact on is pre-K, and of course it costs about $1 million for pre-K classroom to make that. So as we move into having more pre-K, or if we move into the 3-year-old programs, we literally just do not have space in our schools in Frederick County. And that is across the state. That's why, of course, this is a statewide bill. And we also have an aging infrastructure where some of our high schools are literally falling apart. And $150 million, how many, with $450 million total in capital expenditures for the state, how are we going to afford to build some of these new high schools looking at over time? So what this bill does, it amends uncodified language in Chapter 32 of 2022, to require the state's goal for public school construction spending to be recalculated with an inflationary adjustment that uses the cost of construction inflation index. The IAC must include the inflationary adjustment using a cost construction inflation index in its projections of school capital improvement needs for the Capital Debt Affordability Committee. And finally, the IAC must provide its projections of school capital improvement needs to the governor for consideration when he's setting his annual allocation of school construction funds in the capital budget, and it would take effect July 1st. So unfortunately, they don't let, they would never let me tell the governor what to do, or a bill tell the governor what to do as far as putting an amount in the capital expenditures. So this was the best language that I could come up with this. If you pay it, the IAC did submit a letter of information, particularly if you look at the last page of that part of it. It is, they have no issues or no problems with anything as far as in the bill, and so the letter of information is supportive, and there's no issues with it. And then I just wanted to highlight, this is, and I know you guys probably can't see it, that's about 2015, and I'll get this to you guys. This is from the IAC. That's about 2015, where we are with the school construction cost, and then this is where we are now. So the amount that it has increased is just, it's not sustainable for our schools as far as capital improvements. So that's pretty much all I have. Happy to take any questions or talk offline about the impacts of this. We have a lot of impacts in Frederick County that I'd be happy to share with any of you.
Delegate Miller, any questions for the bill sponsor? Delegate McComas.
What Harford County did was we would use the same specs, architectural speculation for the different high schools.
Absolutely.
And do you guys do that too?
We have and that's why I said our county does an amazing job. We are actually a model for the state in how we maintain our schools. We have one of our school board members here, if she'd want to come up and say, but how we maintain our schools, and she was also on the work group with us. It's board member Ray Gallagher. So we are model for state and how we do things. We do have different blueprints of different elementary schools that we use, depending, I think we use one at least 4 times,
so you
and for cost savings and actually improvements and things like that. Yes, we pretty much looked at and actually we're even we looked at trying to get using outside funding or space. I mean, we looked at pretty much everything across the board with this work group. And that is also, I'm happy to share the findings of our work group with you too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks for being with us.
I have one more bill, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you want to do them back to back.
1430, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you, members of the Appropriations Committee. And I'm happy to be here today to ask for your support on, thanks, Greg, on House Bill 1430, which looks at our national board certification. So the question of whether national board certification improves student outcomes through statistically significant means is very complex. While research indicates positive correlations, the precise nature and magnitude of those effects are subject to ongoing debate. Governor Moore has suggested a data-driven approach to governance, and I would ask you to consider the national board if the national board certification is unequivocally proven to be effective at increasing student achievement. Because if we get it wrong, the funding could have been redirected to proven supports or initiatives. We will be paying a huge cost for years to come. So I was on the Board of Education for 8 years, and over the course of that time, I was part of many celebrations of National Board Certification achievement. Most of these Frederick County teachers were amazing. They even had a 3-year supportive cohort to help with the process. They were motivated to be the best teachers they could for their students. However, a lot of these teachers were also already skilled and effective teachers. So we did not have a random representative sample of Frederick County teachers, and any study comparisons would have had to look at a before or after certification effect on student achievement, not just comparing them to non-NBC teachers. These studies are also very difficult to do as they are not longitudinal or looping together with the same students and teachers year over year. So you would have to adjust for the differing levels of student skills of, say, each 4th grade class. The rigorous national board certification process is designed to identify and validate highly effective teaching practices. And this suggests that MBCTs possess advanced pedagogical skills and content knowledge. So have we just been actually making strong teachers even stronger? However, now we are taking away what was an intrinsic motivation and making it more of an extrinsic motivation by adding up to an initial $17,000 salary incentive as well as salary increases for recertification. This bill will make the incentive a stipend instead of a salary increase and decrease the dollar amount, therefore mitigating the impact on pension fund escalation. It also requires a study to be done on evaluating the efficacy of MBC teachers and determine if the laudable goals of increasing MBC teachers will translate into increases in student achievement. We are seeing record numbers of teachers becoming nationally board certified in Maryland at faster rates than ever. The fiscal impacts of this program are unsustainable and I would argue not data-driven and reliable studies. The time to adjust is now before we get too far down a path where change is impossible or unreasonable. And I want to try to quickly walk you through the fiscal impacts. I'm sure you guys have already done this, but most of us don't sit down and look at the budget and look at the implementation issues and with the board. I happen to like it a lot and I have, fun with it. You guys probably aren't so much liking it right now, but you understand it. So I'm hoping to go through this quickly. Please follow up with me if you have any questions or do the same exercise for your own county. So in Frederick County, this is based on the 2024 negotiated salary scale for our 10-month teachers. A teacher has to have 3 years teaching experience and go through the national board process, which at a minimum could take around a year if they're really quick. So we're going to start with a 4-year teacher that earns their MBC. The starting rate with a 4-year teacher is about $60,000, $60,033. You add the $10,000, you're up to $70,000. If they're in a low-performing school, which is those 1- and 2-star schools, they're up to $77,000, roughly. So now, after that, they get a recertification, right? So they get another addition to their salary at recertification, which is usually at 5 years. So that would be at about year 9. So looking at our year 9 numbers and kind of adjusting a little bit for a COLA and other increases that they had to the salary scale, which will be coming as we move up from the $60,000, you're at $85,762 and the low performing numbers around $94,000. If they receive their master's in that time, they're at $88,000 and $96,000. At 14 without a master's, 14 years then without a master's, now we're at $96,762 and $104,762 in the low performing schools. And then at 19, when we're at 19 years, when we've reached the limit on our recertification with our salary increases, you're at about $105,862 and $112,862. Then that's without the master's. With the master's, it's of course higher. These are 10-month positions. So that will be making over $100,000 at 14 years of teaching. And they receive a pension, which most people don't anymore. So please take the time to do this exercise in your own counties. Ask about the numbers of teachers, because I haven't then in aggregate, what is the impact on each county? Because that's our state share. In law, it's a state share that's a minimum amount, especially for the recertifications. So, and then ask the questions about pension impact. Look at the data on effectiveness through an objective lens. Look at who did the study and what were the metrics of it. Are we talking that it was correlation or causation? Are we talking about making the right comparisons? And so speaking of pensions, do we have any idea what the increases in national board certification numbers will do to our pension numbers? The full impact has not even been felt yet, and DLS is already recommending the shift from the $93 million to the $195 million now of the unfunded liability part back to the counties. So I'm going to stop there. I could go on and on about this because, again,
we don't limit bill sponsors, but we're thinking about it.
Right. I really appreciate the time, and just that this was my attempt to relook at something that I know is causing an issue and going to cause an issue both for our locals and both for us as a state, and we really need to start looking at what the fiscal impact will be and the impact on pension. So I
We
appreciate
do have
the
a
time.
witness
I
in
do.
favor.
Thank
2
you.
minutes.
Corinne?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chairman Chang, and committee members. For the record, my name is Corinne Frank, and I'm a resident of Anne Arundel County. I'm here today to speak in support of House Bill 1430. For the past 4 years, I served on the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County, and my term recently ended in December. As the Budget Committee Chair of that body, I have overseen the facilitation of the blueprint, and I am testifying today as a private citizen with a unique perspective. Before leaving the board, I submitted a data request to staff asking for the current number of MBCT applicants at the beginning of the school year, and there were 325 new applicants. Last year, there were 227 new applicants and 367 employees in some stage of the process, and they are not able to, at that time, project a 5-year projection. At these numbers, there are millions of dollars that need to be allocated with no direct ability to capture those future projections. There were also 83 employees in Anne Arundel County who are NBCT ineligible for the salary enhancement, but I know that there are also discussions to try to include them in the future. Total costs are extremely difficult to calculate and are likely to increase as more teachers apply to become National Board Certified Teachers. The Blueprint funding mechanism has several other components, as I'm sure you are all very much aware. Starting salaries, teacher classroom time, compensatory education, and the looming capital costs associated with classroom time and pre-K requirements. Reducing requirements is in alignment with PASAM recommendations and would give our school systems the grace that they need to develop smart growth plans based on student population and economic ability, and better provide the ability to create appropriate budget categories. I humbly request you take a second look at this to give our school systems a little bit of grace. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Question for the bill sponsor panel. We do have Delegate Vogel with us from Ways and Means. Just want to mention that. Welcome. Okay, thank you, Delegate. We do have one unfavorable.
Yeah. Oh, unfavorable, right?
Kenzie Funk, Strong Schools, Maryland.
Hello. Thank you to the Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Kenzie Funk, and I'm here on behalf of Strong Schools Maryland as a policy advocate in opposition of House Bill 1430. The blueprint was designed to ensure both student success and teacher effectiveness by creating a structured career ladder that incentivizes professional growth and long-term teacher workforce retention. Under the current law, teachers who achieve National Board Certification, or NBC, receive a permanent $10,000 salary increase with an additional $7,000 allocated for those working in low-performing schools. These financial incentives are critical to attracting and keeping highly effective educators in Maryland classrooms. House Bill 1430 threatens these efforts by replacing permanent salary increases with temporary 4-year stipends, while also cutting the promised amounts in half. As a result, the impacts of House Bill 1430 could include increased teacher turnover, reduced incentives to teach at low-performing schools, and a lack of progress towards the vision of the blueprint, which includes professionalization of the teaching career and adequate compensation for teachers' efforts, times, and talents. This shift could create long-term financial instability for teachers, discouraging them from pursuing career advancements, and ultimately weakening Maryland's ability to retain high-quality and diverse teacher workforce. Now, we acknowledge the need for conversations surrounding flexibility in the career ladder, but this bill does not expand opportunities. It reduces these commitments made to educators. We should have the conversation surrounding making pathways for certification accessible to all educator positions and create alternative pathways to expand opportunities for job mobility and growth. However, this is not an attempt at that. Rather, this is a weakening of the career ladder, and for these reasons, we strongly urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for the witness? Delegate McComas?
Do you know which occupations allow at least 2 months vacation a year, like teachers?
I'm not sure.
You don't know of any others?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for being with us. That concludes the bill hearing. Delegate Wims, 1245. And do you have I think there may be a few people here in favor of the bill. If you're in favor of the bill, come on up, because it's a little unclear on the list who's unfavorable and who's favorable. So looks like mostly unfavorable, but a few favorable. So if you're favorable, come on up here, join the delegate. And I'll do another call for any favorable after that, and then we'll move to the unfavorable.
Thank you. First time here. I'm glad to be here. Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Chair Chang, Vice Chair Chang, and esteemed members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Greg Wims. I'm here to present House Bill 1245, Blueprint for Maryland's Future, Alterations. The bill will revise different aspects of the blueprint and come from recommendations from the 24 superintendents. And I want to repeat that. This is coming from all 24 superintendents. Their experience and insight after 3 years of the blueprint implementation is important to know what is working and what is not working. Their recommendations outlined in this legislation seek to ensure Blueprint is achieving the primary goal of creating a world-class educational system in Maryland. The bill includes 7 of their policy recommendations that aim to strengthen the Blueprint. I have put in an amendment because we see there are a lot of folks behind me that will come talking about the career connections. And what my amendment simply says is that the superintendents may, it's not shall, but may, continue the career counseling program. So in my bill, they will have the opportunities to work directly with the superintendents from each school. I bring this bill also as a conversation with your committee and that Maryland General Assembly to how we can improve the blueprint. I want to use an analogy. I'm a great football lover, and I played at Gaithersburg High School, and I see under the great John Harvard, and I see my delegate from Gaithersburg here. When we were losing a game at the first half, we would always make adjustments during halftime. And for the most part, when we came out, we ended up winning. So I use that analogy to say that we want to take a look and see what we can do to improve these circumstances. Then finally, they're going to talk about the 7 main objectives, but I want to highlight one that is very special to me. My first job was as a Head Start teacher in Montgomery County. And as it turned out, I made history because I was the first male Head Start teacher in the county. And so I got to see firsthand, and in my very first professional job, what it means to have these kids that come pre-K. So under one of the recommendations, the bill would move special education students and multilingual students into the Tier 1 for funding purposes. These students will be given priority for expanding kindergarten slots. So with that, I thank you and I ask for a favorable report, and I would like my panel to speak.
Let's take questions for the bill sponsor first. If you have a question for the bill sponsor, please raise your hand. Okay, we got a few questions for you, Delegate. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready for all the answers.
All right, let's take the witnesses from the left and go ahead. We'll take questions at the end.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the Appropriations Committee. I am Jennifer Swickard-Mello. I am here today as Chair of the Maryland Association of Boards of Education Legislative Committee and also a member of the Howard County's Board of Education. and am here to offer strong support for HB 1245. Of the many proposals suggested by the Maryland Public School Superintendents Association, in concert with the local blueprint implementation coordinators, I will highlight just two today. Under Pillar 1, Early Childhood Education, HB 1245 reflects local school systems' understanding of the intent of the blueprint to expand universal pre-kindergarten for the state's most vulnerable students. In Howard County alone, our staff estimates that there are 160 students enrolled in full-day pre-kindergarten programs receiving special education services, but do not fall into the Tier 1 category. This is over 10% of our pre-K population as of the official September enrollment counts. These students are identified as a priority under the law, yet not for funding purposes, along with multilingual learners. Previously introduced bills have attempted to rectify this area of law as proposed by HB 1245 with large fiscal notes. This critical group of students should receive funding rather than be hampered by the fiscal impact. Under Pillar 3, College and Career Readiness, HB 1245 addresses an area across school districts where the blueprint could provide greater flexibility for each county. The current requirement to cover all post-college and career costs for the students is one of the innovative approaches of the blueprint to propel students forward by removing fiscal barriers.
Thank you. Yep. Mary Pat?
You're fine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Pat Fannin. I'm the Executive Director of the Public School Superintendents Association of Maryland. First, I want to thank you so much for House Bill 504 last week, and we really appreciate you being champions on that front. I also want to thank my sponsor and for incorporating 11 of our 30 recommendations, and we really did a top-to-bottom, pillar-by-pillar search we assessed the blueprint over the interim, and these really rose to the top, and we appreciate his sponsorship. The board member Mallow has also talked about the pre-K is a priority, the Tier 1 status, and the General Assembly, actually, you all had this as a policy for 2 years, but it expired in fiscal 26, and we think that these are early learners who would really benefit from having Tier 1 status. Another priority for us is the bill would remove assistant principals and principals from the career ladder provisions in the blueprint. We think that this strongly aligns with longstanding collective bargaining agreements or units structures that we have in school systems where administrators and teachers are in different units. NBC is a requirement right now, and it really isn't an appropriate certification for administrators. So we're really hoping that we could separate them out through this legislation. And the last thing I want to talk about is the career counseling, and Delegate Wims did put an amendment in that makes it clear we are not proposing to end the career counseling program. What we're proposing is to end the mandated pilot with the workforce investment boards and the community colleges. And I ask you to look at my testimony. There's been a lot of uneven implementation of this plan, and it's $55 million a year. We cannot afford to not get this right. So.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chairman Chang, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Matt Stansky. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of House Bill 1245. I'm going to discuss the proposed changes in Education Article 5-234, money following the student, in the legislation to allow for aggregate funding by school rather than a school meeting up to 9 separate blueprint category requirements to comply with this important blueprint initiative. The proposed change is critical to ensuring that our schools have the flexibility they need to allocate resources in a way that best serves their students. Currently, the requirement to meet every blueprint category individually creates unnecessary administrative burdens that detract from the core mission of our schools, educating students. It forces school leaders to navigate a rigid and complex system that prioritizes compliance over effective resource allocation. By allowing schools to aggregate funding allocated to them at the school level, we empower principals and district administrators to make decisions based on the real needs of their students. This flexibility is particularly important in addressing the unique challenges faced by individual schools, whether that's changes in student demographics year over year, hiring additional special education teachers based on need, investing in mental health services, or expanding extracurricular opportunities. Schools need the ability to respond quickly and effectively to changing circumstances, and because the compliance mechanism is prior year enrollments, the current structure makes that flexibility to respond extremely difficult. Additionally, existing reporting and compliance requirements create an undue burden on school and district staff, diverting valuable time and energy away from educational priorities. This change would streamline financial processes, reduce administrative red tape, and allow district leaders and building administrators to focus on what matters most, teaching and supporting students. I thank you for your time and happy to answer questions.
Good. Are there actual questions for the bill sponsor or panel? Okay, Delegate Stanko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any of you can answer this. I've been diving deep as much as possible into the blueprint language, and I want to understand specifically with the career counselor framework and the goals of college and career readiness, right? I think it's a critical component of the blueprint, and I think that's a pretty bipartisan opinion as part of the blueprint. Mike, help me first understand. So if the cost for paying for career counselors, does that fall into the foundations part of the formula? So if in counties where it is moved to May, right, would that give the superintendents an out to understand it with the board's approval, right, Board of Ed's approval? Would that give the superintendents the ability, why wouldn't that give the superintendent an ability to prioritize other things besides the career counselor if it's not important to them?
You want to answer that?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. I will say in the actual implementation of this program, it's always been made clear to us by the AIB and the MSDE that when the pilot expires, the expectation is that the $62 a student goes to career counseling. And I think we are fine with the statute being clarified if it makes people more comfortable. I understand where your question is. Would it just get folded into everything else? And the answer is we are committed to the career counseling. When the Kerwin Commission went and discussed Pillar 3 and included this, they recognized that bringing the business community in would be important, but they also weren't sure that the relationship was going to work, which is why they made it a 3-year funding relationship. So what we're saying is after 2 years, this has been uneven across the state, and it's a lot of money, and we know that it's important, so we really want this money to be as invested as effectively as possible in the children.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for the panel or the bill sponsor? Okay, thank you, Delegate. Thank you all. I think we have a few other favorables. Let me try and get to them because they're mixed in here. Sarah Sample, Mike Sanderson, Rhea Gupta. I think that's all the favorables I have left. If there are other favorables, come up now. Now is your time. Just if you're favorable, I have a number of unfavorable, so.
Should I go ahead and start? Okay. Thank you to the chair and members of the committee for having me. My name is Sarah Sample. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties, and we support with amendment. We have an initiative this year. It's one of our top 4 that is about realigning the blueprint with fiscal and implementation realities. We think that this bill is absolutely focusing on realigning with implementation realities, and it's coming from the experts on the ground that are doing this work every day, which is the superintendents. We have 4 amendments. I'm going to talk about one of them, which is the career counseling, but I would direct you to my written testimony for the other 3. We believe that the career counseling is vital to making sure that we have a robust local workforce at the end of implementation. When we were in a hearing last week on this bill, I got to be honest, when I was in there, I was getting some content, but I was getting some accusations, allegations, things like that. I came out of there feeling, I think, a little bit more confused than I intended to. And I circled back with some of our local jurisdictions, and I found that There are some places where the career counseling program is working and others where they're running into some growing pains, but we are not hearing that it's a statewide disaster. And I think the blueprint is not a stranger to growing pains. And our concern with the amendment that has been offered is that it's allowing the schools the discretion to move forward with the programs by bringing them back inside. And our concern is that sometimes when a collaboration is not working out, sometimes that knee-jerk response is, I'm going to go ahead and do it myself. And I don't believe that the school systems, based on what we've heard, are in a position to be taking on more work without leveraging other resources in the community. So we want this to work. We want to be used as an asset in this situation. Our amendment is that we want to require that the local education agencies consult with us if we're going to go and navigate in a different direction. And we want to be able to help them do that, whether it's the community colleges or, it's going in a direction of a third party or maybe a different division in the county government. We want to be there to help them with this, and we want them to be required to consult with us about whether or not we can help, because they're doing a historic lift. So we want to support this with amendments to that degree. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Ellie Mitchell. I'm the director of the Maryland Out of School Time Network, and I'm here on behalf of the Blueprint Coalition to support House Bill 1245 with amendments. And I'm going to focus mostly on the amendments today. The first is that the most alarming change is the minimum funding requirement. The minimum funding requirement ensures that 75% of per pupil follows the students, and the proposed waiver allowing schools with fewer than 350 students to bypass this requirement is flawed. The waiver would open the door for school districts to redirect money away from historically underfunded schools, undermining the very foundation of the point of the blueprint. We also disagree with allowing blueprint expenditures to be aggregated at the school level. If school districts can report only lump sums instead of detailing how the money is spent, we lose a critical accountability tool and have too little visibility. Another concern is the post-CCR pathway funding tied to FARMS eligibility. FARMS has long been an imperfect measure. It's not used in systems that participate in community eligibility and may be replaced in the future by the neighborhood indicators of poverty. And so that may not be the best way to determine what students are eligible for that support. We urge the committee to move this bill forward with these amendments that are detailed in the written testimony, and I have Rhea from Strong Schools Maryland by my side to be able to help answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, just a quick bit. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and committee members. My name is Rhea Gupta. I'm the Interim Executive Director of Strong Schools Maryland. We do support HB 1245 with amendments. We do have some serious concerns that Ellie uplifted. I do want to lift up some comments from Liz Zogby of the Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition, who is scheduled to testify but could not be here today. MDAC and Strong Schools strongly supports two provisions specifically: a special education funding adequacy study to assess funding gaps, transportation costs, and support needs. Liz has proposed an amendment to accelerate the study timeline to address urgent funding shortfalls. Also, we agree that expanding Tier 1 pre-K eligibility to include children with disabilities and multilingual learners is needed, with a 29-point readiness gap. Prioritizing pre-K access is critical. At the same time, MDAC, Strong Schools Maryland, Blueprint Coalition, we have serious concerns about the minimum school funding requirement provisions in this bill, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions about that.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the cast? Okay, thank you all. Have a great day. Five at a time, come up, get to the desk, and start your testimony. Autumn Myers, Clifton Gatson, Amanda Rosenblum, Brandon Butler, Kirkland Murray. Come on up.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Brandon Butler on behalf of the Maryland Workforce Association. Unfortunately, Mr. Murray is under the weather today and cannot make it, so we can cross his name off the list. Here in opposition of House Bill 1245, let me make a number of points that you just heard and factual inaccuracies. Number one, this is not a pilot. If you look at the language in the bill that the bill is trying to repeal, which repeal is 5 words into the long paragraph, it says There's no word in that, in either one of those sections that says pilot. It's not a pilot, and there's we can provide an Attorney General's letter to that effect as well. Number two, there's talk about flexibility, but again, there's not anything about flexibility in this bill. There is one strong word: repeal. This is the amendment that was provided today that would allow the superintendents the flexibility. Well, that is in our estimation elimination by other means. This isn't about flexibility, as the chair stated today on the floor. Every time that we have an education reform in the nation, LEAs, good or bad, and just to paraphrase, sir, take the money and spend it where they want to spend it. Sir, and I think that's exactly the point of what the superintendents are wanting to do here. This is a targeted and dedicated funding source to make students truly college and career ready. Or as Chairman Ike Leggett said recently, this is the North Star of the blueprint. And so we are laser focused, the General Assembly is laser focused on things like federal workers. And workforce boards are engaging to provide job fairs and resumes and all those in connecting federal workers. And so that's why we're asking that students have that same authority, same opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good.
Hi, my name is Autumn Myers, and I'm a high school career coach with Anne Arundel Workforce Development, serving Northeast High School. I was born and raised in Baltimore in a blue-collar family. I didn't come from money. I saw firsthand how communities struggle without the very resources that are being deliberated today. My family moved to the county for me to have a better education. Like many millennials, I was told that college was the path to success. Well, I went to college, switched my majors 3 times, and eventually had to drop out due to debt. Without direction, I worked a multitude of jobs. As a single mother, I worked 6 days a week in a warehouse just to keep a roof over my head, relying on a space heater and winter coats in my living room the first winter. Pursuing a welding certification allowed me to get back into college to earn my bachelor's degree in HR management. I worked in workforce reentry, helping folks transition back into society out of prison. Without these programs, people are lost. I've seen what happens when individuals don't have the guidance and support that they need to navigate their careers or to simply keep their bills paid. I am a living, breathing example of why we are essential in our schools. My students deserve career exploration beyond the pressure of a 4-year degree. I've helped students with resumes, job interviews, and non-traditional career paths. I've led resume workshops in special ed classrooms and created a supportive space for students to explore their futures. Don't expect for a second our already overworked school guidance counselors are going to take over this initiative. They're already overwhelmed with scheduling and supporting students facing mental health challenges and growing stress without the proper support that they need at home. The impact of Blueprint for Maryland's future is critical, not just for my students, but for future generations. We are living in an ever-changing, challenging workforce environment, and it is our responsibility to ensure that students have the tools to navigate it successfully. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the chair and the committee. I'm Amanda Rosenblum. I'm the Industry Engagement Coordinator, a member of the MoCo CAP team. We're the Career Coaching Division of WorkSource Montgomery and the Montgomery County Workforce Development Board. The need to connect students directly with employers and career mentors has never been more acute. Today, we're facing massive shortages in healthcare, construction, tech, and more. Students don't know what they don't know, and the burden of keeping up with regional workforce trends can't fall alone on parents, guidance counselors, and teachers. That's where I come in conjunction with our in-school career coaches. I help connect students with mentors and industry professionals. Thousands of students have heard firsthand accounts of careers through 115 MetaPro face-to-face sessions and from 347 of our regional employers who connected with students via career talks, career fairs, or panel discussions. In 2 weeks, at the Worlds of Work 3-day mega event, 3,000 8th graders will meet 185 employers to learn about industries and job roles that they may not know anything at all about yet. At some point in the not-too-distant future, a young person is going to be asked what first drew them to their profession, and they will answer that they met a professional as the result of our program, and that was the start of everything for them. This program is the connective tissue between schools, students, and the business community, and the relationship is working. I appreciate your time, and I urge you to vote in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify against House Bill 1245. My name is Clifton Gadsden Sr. I am a career education manager, a member of the Montgomery County Career Advising Program, or MOCOCAP, the Career Education Services Division of WorkSource Montgomery, and Montgomery County Workforce Development Board. I have the incredible privilege of supporting 8 coaches as they serve in 12 schools, middle and high schools that represent a portion of the 55 coaches we have that are supporting 65 plus middle schools and high schools in Montgomery County. Our coaches begin the conversation about the world of work in 6th grade. This early engagement helps to augment the ongoing conversations students are having with their teachers, counselors, parents, and friends about what their futures hold. Our coaches utilize dialogic conversations and John Holland's RISEC themes to help them better understand how to select their careers and what that will be fulfilling and rewarding for them. Our coaches work with their students to help them better understand their strengths, their interests, and their workplace values. This program provides MCPS students a trusted adult who supports their curiosity in their futures and provides them tools on how to navigate what's next. As a former classroom teacher, having an additional resource to help my students better understand how to achieve their career goals is a resource that should not be turned away. Our coaches bring decades of workplace knowledge, skills, and experiences to this program. One of my coaches is also a barber. He has spoken to his students about this experience. He has a student who comes to him literally every day to pick his brain about how to be a barber, how to cut hair, what guards to use, how to handle specific situations. These are the types of conversations happening all over MCPS that this bill seeks to limit. I just would like to strongly encourage each one of you to consider voting in opposition to this bill. Thank you very much.
Good. And thanks for stopping there when the buzzer went off. Any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you all. Thanks for your advocacy and being with us today. It's important. Ari Plout, Ellie Mitchell, Rachel Albal, Adria Jones Johnson, and Malik Self. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. I am Ari Plout. I'm here on behalf of Baltimore's Promise. We are a collective impact organization dedicated to improving career pathways for youth in Baltimore, and we specifically oppose the provision that repeals the career counseling funding. This is very important to Baltimore City. Career counseling is critical. It's a critical bridge between education and employment. The current framework ensures students receive individualized career guidance, access to apprenticeships, and diverse career opportunities. Over the past 6 months, Baltimore Career Coaching connected with over 17,000 city youth between grades 6 through 12. There's also been some paid internships, including with the MTA. And so we support collaboration among workforce boards and high school systems statewide to strengthen career counseling. So with that, we oppose that provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Malik Self. I am a career coach for Anne Arundel County, and I am a floater career coach, which means I go to different schools in the county to offer support when needed. And so what I want to share with you guys is an experience that I've had at Southern High School. So for the first semester, I was at Crofton. Now for the last 3 weeks, I have been at Southern High School, and one of my students by the name of Alicia Wallace, I spoke to her within the past 2 to 3 weeks. In the short amount of time that I had with this student, I have made a huge impact. She spoke to me and told me that before I got here, she had no vision of graduating high school. Her mom told her that she would either be dead or in jail less than a year, and she believed that. In 3 weeks, I was able to help her. She was failing 4 out of her 8 classes, now passing all. She is no longer roaming the hallways. She now sees a vision for herself. She now knows what she wants to do when she graduates high school, which is be a vet. She had no idea what she wanted to do prior to me coming to that school, showing support. You may ask, why can't the counselors, the guidance, and other support staff in the school help her? She has repeatedly told me that they have no time for her and they don't want to deal with her situation. Thank you for your time.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the community. I am Andrea Jones Hythen Johnson. I am an 8th grader at Old Mill Middle North, and I am unfavorable of the bill HB 1245. Career coaches help build community relationships and help with career days. Career days help with making students know what careers they want to do. Before some of the career days at my school, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a nurse, but I never knew what type of nurse I wanted to be. Now, after career days, I knew I want to be a nurse practitioner and own my own clinic in a hospital. If you take away these if you take away this bill, there will be no more Maryland.
It's okay.
There will be no Maryland workshops, and I have a first-hand experience of Maryland Leadership Workshop, where you can learn leadership workshops in a whole week, and it will. There's many partnerships with Anne Arundel County College and hands-on experience with trades and culinary robotics. And thank you for your time.
Excellent work. Speaking from the heart always makes a big difference, and you did excellent. Okay.
Does. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rachel Allball. I am the career coach for Chesapeake High School. I had something prepared, but I think I'm just going to go from the heart. As a career coach, I have the opportunity to interact with students that may be falling through the cracks. And our schools are very busy, they're very overloaded. And if you roam the hallways at any given time in the day, you'll see a lot of students out there that just need someone to listen to them. For example, I have a student that she was failing most of her classes, and she's gone through significant losses. And I was able to talk to her, like, what are you doing? What's your plan? What are you thinking? And she said, I want to be a nurse in the Army. And I said, well, what are you doing with your grades? Like, you need to graduate high school so you can do that. And she was like, oh, Mrs. A, I don't know. And I said, well, put some thought into it. And, within 2 weeks, she came back to me, and it was getting close to the end of the quarter. And she went from all failing grades to passing everything. And every time she sees me in the hallway, she's like, guess what my grades are? Guess what my grades are? She'll come seek me out just to let me know how she's doing. And she's only one student. The career counseling, we really have the responsibility and the duty to impact students. As Autumn Meyer said earlier, I could have benefited from a career counselor. I changed my major 7 times. I'm $100,000 in debt for college. Was it worth it? Sure. Could I have done trades? Could I have done something else? Absolutely. But I didn't know that stuff existed. So, thank you.
Any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you all once again. Appreciate you. Spencer Evans, LaToya Jones, Rashawn Osborne, Renee Lambert, and Andy Kamali. That should complete our panels.
Start? Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Oh, he's gone. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Artie Kamali. I'm here on behalf of Employ Prince George's in strong opposition to HB 1245. Absolutely. Can you hear me? Okay. I want to begin by thanking Delegate Wims and his staff for hearing our concerns and having dialogues. We truly appreciate him taking the time. So local workforce boards exist to serve our communities. We provide vital career counseling and employment services that school systems simply cannot replicate. The career counseling program has allowed us access directly to the students, ensuring that they receive guidance and support they need to navigate their futures. Under current law, the Blueprint sets aside $65 per pupil for career counseling. After that, after FY26, that funding becomes discretionary, as you've heard. Unfortunately, since day one, PZAM has mischaracterized this program as a pilot program, creating the false impression that workforce boards are a temporary nuisance instead of essential partners. In Prince George's County, this misconception has led to a contentious and obstructive implementation process. Despite hiring 60 career counselors, we faced nearly a year of unpaid invoices and were denied physical access to the schools for the first year of implementation. The dysfunction became so bad that AIB had to step in, appoint a facilitator, and explicitly order PGCPS to let us do our jobs. And now, less than a year after of meaningful implementation, the superintendents want to scrap the program entirely. Let's be clear, this is a money grab, plain and simple. PGCPS, with its $3 billion budget, that's billion with a B, wants to reclaim a modest $6.5 million that we get to provide critical career counseling for our students. And, I'm sorry, may I continue? And this bill wouldn't even return the money to the state. They could spend it however they see fit. I know it's Ash Wednesday, I don't want to sound cliche, but this is a David and Goliath battle. We're fighting to serve students with meaningful career pathway services outside of just college and the military.
Rise it up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. I am Rashawn Osborne. I am a mother, and I'm also part of the PTA. I'm a small business owner and a certified personal trainer, kettlebell coach, and exercise specialist. I would like to oppose the testify against the bill because education is that connection of career development. I come from a family of hard workers that were able to become physicians. They were able to become military, police, all branches of the military, and that was made possible because of education. Even growing up as a small child, I was the person who looked at the encyclopedias, who watched the Olympics, but wanted to find out how the athletes were able to do what they do. And because of being informed through my own career days as a child, I grew up to become a woman in a male-dominated field, to teach and to inspire others. I've been able to work with PG County, I've been able to work with Anne Arundel County, and also Howard County throughout Maryland to instill that education and letting students know that no matter what the obstacles they have, education is that vehicle that allows them and propels them to do jobs that they would love to do and also to empower their community. It's something I've been able to do consecutively for 12 years with AACPS and also with PG County, and even to the point where Arrowhead elementary students wrote letters of appreciation expressing how that empowered them and helped them to see. I also have a child who has special needs, ADHD and ODD, and having that career day opened the door for her to enable her to know she could do STEM, something that she's very good at, and coding, and it allowed her to not be as shy and not as withdrawn. So that is why I would like to testify to oppose against that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and the committee. A train wreck is a chaotic or disastrous situation that holds a peculiar fascination for observers. I would definitely say career coaching is not a train wreck. In fact, we are the medicine that supports students during and after the people who caused the train wreck have fled the scene. Interested students all across the board are learning what it means to be career focused. We have students that are looking at us for help and guidance, students who are not aware of what the different 17 career clusters are. And when they come to find out that arts is a career cluster and that they're able to follow their dreams and their hearts despite what anybody says, it is amazing to see. We had a student who didn't understand how many occupations occupations fall under arts. She understood now that she wants to be a cosmetologist and that there are many characters on Broadway that would not be represented today if there wasn't for a cosmetologist. We have a military person who wanted to pursue military but did not understand that they needed to take an ASVAB. Our career coaches step in the gap. We are the ones who support them in understanding what they need to do next to follow their career pathway. I would also say that we are beyond the high school diploma. We do not just sit in the high school diploma, we follow after that. And instead of determining people and persons for pipelines, prison pipelines, career coaches are supporting students in determining successful futures. So I would say that that question that we ask each fourth grader, third grader, what do you want to be when you grow up? We are the people that don't take away their dreams. We are the people that inspire them to know that it's achievable. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Spencer Evans, and I work as an in-school youth career coach for Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation. I currently work at Corcoran Middle School, serving students from 6th grade to 8th grade, where we discuss career exploration, life, and what is required of them to be good citizens. In my experience, career coaching provides hope to all students, especially those students, parents, and families who want to do better in their life, but they're not sure how to get there. I recently hosted a lunch gathering or a lunch bunch with a group of students, a group of 7. The discussion that we had, overcoming the fear of failure. Some of the fears and discussions that we had were about homelessness, being alone, not meeting their goals, disappointing those around them, and ultimately being successful. As career coaches, we don't just push into classrooms and discuss modules. We talk to our students about life. We are the standard bearers of what is expected in the workforce and what is expected of a law-abiding citizen. In short, I would say that they left that meeting with their own goals and reassurance that they do have support in the world, that there are opportunities for all students, even students like them. To conclude, career coaches do a lot more than just go into schools and fill out worksheets. We turn fear and apprehension into grit and resilience. We turn dreams into goals. We turn those goals into deadlines, and those deadlines consequently, with their ambition, turn into reality and success. I ask humbly that you vote against House Bill 1245. Without career coaching, we will continue to feel the long-term effects of young adults not being prepared for the world that awaits them. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes and members of the committee. My name is Renee Lambert, and I am the career coach at Meade Middle School in Anne Arundel County. Before working as a middle school career coach, I worked as a career coach with emerging adults, 18 to 24 years old, and I have had countless experiences with numerous young people that unfortunately lack the direction, motivation, self-awareness, career awareness, and crucial life and employability skills needed for success. Working with young adults helped me to understand just how vital it is to prepare and arm our young people much earlier in their educational journeys and provide them with the exposure to the many varying employment opportunities available to them before they're faced with certain life challenges, at which point some options become increasingly limited. I work in a school that is a Title I designated school, and because of the life challenges that many of our students are facing, they often don't have the necessary supports in place that help them see beyond their present situations and encourage them to consider their futures, because we often find ourselves in crisis and survival mode daily, dealing with a revolving door of concerns and challenges. I understand today emphatically that in-school career coaching is essential in aiding our educators and counselors with closing the gaps that keep many of our students from realizing and maximizing their potential. Some might think that resources are wasted at the middle school level by introducing career exploration while students aren't necessarily future-minded, but my perspective is that we need to get them future-minded at those points and help provide them with the motivation to meet the goals that they're learning how to set for themselves. And the repeal of career coaching would be a disservice to our students who do not know what they do not know and are already faced with so many limiting beliefs about themselves and their abilities to succeed. And as a career coach, my work is both impactful and important to help my students know their options and to learn different paths and avenues to success. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Any questions from members of the committee for the panel? Okay, great. Thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1245. The committee will now move on to House Bill 1369, Education Minimum Wage for Education Support Professionals. Delegate Williams.
Delegate one day. Please. Okay. Whole panel here. Hello. Ready? Okay. Good afternoon again. For the record, Greg Wims, presenting House Bills 1369. And I have to say, this time I hope all of you don't raise your hand and ask me any questions. Look at that. This bill would establish a $25 minimum wage for all education support professionals who work in a public school. It would provide a definition of education support professionals in the Maryland Code. Education support professionals are a vital but often overlooked part of our public schools. These professionals are made up of our bus drivers, our paraprofessionals, our food and nutrition workers in the cafeteria, our pre-K assistants, our public personnel workers, our IT workers. Unfortunately, the compensation they receive does not reflect the work and the dedication of our school systems. I know firsthand sacrifices by these workers, and I want to put a personal privilege. I literally worked 25 years, 2 jobs, to try to make ends meet for my family. As it turned out, after working all those years, I was able to get a job that let me to stay home with my family, the way I could work 1 job. But all these workers we're talking about, even our teachers are working 2, sometimes 3 jobs to survive. I also want to say that we don't sometimes, not us, this committee, all of us, because we're elected officials, we know the importance of what these workers do. But the community as a role doesn't realize how important it is to be what we call bill and service workers, which some people call janitors still, our cafeteria workers. And when some of our kids come in and they're hungry and they don't have their funds, sometimes those cafeteria workers will give them the food or give them funds for that. So this is why this bill is so important to me and why I think it's important, and I'm asking for your favorable support for this bill. Thank you very much, and we'll let the panel go from here. You want to go first?
Sure. So good afternoon, Chair Barnes and the members of the House Appropriations Committee. My name is Travis Simon, and I'm the Executive Director of SEIU Local 500. We represent over 23,000 workers in the area, including support staff at MCPS, family child care providers, higher education workers, nonprofit workers, and many, many more. I am proud to stand in support of HB 1369 to establish a $25 minimum wage for K-12 support staff. Our public schools do not function without the dedicated support staff who transport our students, keep our schools clean and secure, provide nutritious meals, and provide direct instruction. Sorry. Yet, too many of these essential workers are struggling to make ends meet on wages that fail to reflect the value of their work. This bill is not just about fair pay. It's about strengthening our schools and our communities. Investing in support staff is investing in Maryland's future. For these reasons and many more, we strongly urge a favorable committee report on HB 1369. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I am Stacy Tame, and I serve as the president of the Calvert Association of Educational Support Staff. Thank you for your commitment to public education and your actions last week and for standing with us and our students. I'd like to talk about the dire need to set the minimum starting wage for education support professionals, or ESPs, at $25 per hour. Our wages are systemically low across this country, and annual increases, if there are any, are also low. And more often than not, ESPs are told that we have to wait until we settle the teacher contract so we know how much is left over for you. Leftovers. Leftovers for professionals who provide life-saving measures every day within our school walls and on buses, professionals who provide vital instructional support and infrastructure services to keep the school day functioning. These are careers, not just jobs, and we are struggling to put food on the table, and we deserve more than leftovers. My personal public education career spans 29 years. Over that time, I have earned, on average, increases of only $1,200 a year, $50 a paycheck pre-tax for 29 years. I earn more in my new part-time job where I'm heading next. ESPs deserve respect and our paychecks for what we do. There must be a solid foundation from which ESPs can grow both financially and professionally. May I finish? Careers in public education should not equate to financial hardship. Schools deserve to have staff who thrive within the communities where we live and serve while growing and shaping our next generation of community leaders. I urge you to support House Bill 1369. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Delania Akindoyo, and I serve as the president of ASME Local 1693. I'm here to testify in strong support of HB 1369. I have proudly served as a school custodian for AACPS for nearly 20 years, and I'm sorry, I have this written, but if I want to give some stories of some of the people that I represent. I represent bus drivers, food service workers, custodians. We call them Unit 3 workers here in Anne Arundel County. And a lot of these people do not make a livable wage. They work multiple jobs, but they love the kids just as much as the teachers do, but they don't get recognition for it. A lot of them have even lost their jobs for telling a kid that they could go to the bathroom. We have food because they're not teachers. We have food service workers who they come to work every day for 2 weeks, but they send the board a check because they can have, so that they can have health insurance instead of getting money. But this Christmas, they all collected hundreds of dollars out of their pay, their kids, their sacrifice for their kids, but they collected money to give to kids who don't have, right? They see these kids in the morning before the teachers see them, and they feed them, they clean up after them, and then they take these kids back home to their parents. But then they don't get to see their kids because they're working 3 and 4 jobs or 2 and 3 jobs to be able to provide for their children. Most of them work for Anne Arundel County, but they can't afford to live in this county. So I just ask that you support this bill so that they could have a livable wage and that they could spend time with their families also. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Samantha Zwirling, representing Maryland State Education Association with 75,000 members across the state. I want to start by thanking this committee. Your work to restore funding cuts last week is going to help support education support professionals, and it helps support their wages. This committee and the General Assembly over the past few years has also seen education support professionals through their $1,000 bonus that you all helped to provide for pandemic. And then last year you passed language in the Joint Chairman's report really trying to study education support professional wages, because unfortunately we just don't have the data like we do on teachers. And you'll see in my written testimony speaks to that. We, as many other here have mentioned, you know, education support professionals need support. And we really appreciate the sponsor in this committee for giving our folks a chance to tell their stories as we continue to look at how we can support working conditions and wages moving forward. So with that, we look forward to working with the committee and the General Assembly on this issue. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any idea approximately the average hourly wage that they make now?
I do. So for us in Anne Arundel County, they start off at $15. And it's crazy because this is their career, and their children who are in high school can go to Chick-fil-A and work part-time and make $19, $20. But they have to provide for their families on $15 an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Can
Can I add something to that? You also don't get 40 hours a week as a support staff professional in many of the school systems. So just because you're making $15, $20 an hour does not mean that you're making as much as you would think. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Delegate Wynn. I have a question. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking Baltimore County already pays $25. Does anybody?
So in Baltimore County, I think about 50% of the unit is at 25 an hour. So that's why when you look at the fiscal note, it doesn't fully take into account who's already at that amount. The other kind of problem when you look at education support professionals as a whole, IT professionals are included in that. And so it sometimes then messes up, skews the data a little bit. So you'll see kind of the report from the joint chairman's report last year, some of the data that came back, they try to parse out IT professionals as opposed to other professionals. So it really is different jurisdictional answer.
Because I recall did a study or something that the cafeteria workers and the bus drivers, because we had a shortage of bus drivers, and they paid them a sign-on bonus and that kind of thing, and it well exceeded the $25, I think. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I think that some of that was one-time funds, especially from COVID pandemic relief funds from the federal government. So some of those were one-time bonuses, almost similar to what the General Assembly did for the $1,000 bonus statewide. I can't speak to that contract, but.
So also, I'm sorry, on that, can I just say that there's two separate things. There are contractor bus drivers, and I know in Anne Arundel County, there are contractor bus drivers that work for private and they get paid that. But then in Anne Arundel County, the county bus drivers, we only do special needs children, and they don't get paid the same as the contractor drivers. So they get paid starting at the $15 or $18.
Questions? Okay, thank you so much, Delegate. Thanks for the bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good job for your first time here. All right, we have Delegate Guyton for her 36th time in front of Appropriations. House Bill 912.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. May my panel approach? Thank you. Let's see. And I believe we have a student from the Federation of the Blind as well. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you. For the record, Delegate Michelle Guyton, District 42B in Baltimore County. And I really do love you guys. And I know that you love me because all of my bills so far have had no fiscal note, and they're really simple and easy to pass. So I'm still hopeful and crossing my fingers that that will happen. But today I'm asking for your thoughtful consideration of House Bill 912. What House Bill 912 does is require training for instructors in our institutions of higher learning on the Americans with Disabilities Act and appropriate classroom accommodations for our students with disabilities. So I really, really cannot express my appreciation more for the conversation and the ongoing collaboration that I've had with Secretary Rye, and you will see that they're here today in support of this piece of legislation. He has been someone, even before he was in the position of Secretary of MHEC, he has, in his role at Montgomery College, really done groundbreaking work in supporting his students there with disabilities. So I know that his heart was in the right place, so I went to him to work on this legislation. And he's been terrific, as has everyone at MHEC. So it is already federal law, right, that educational or training institutions have to accommodate our students with disabilities, right? That's through the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504. These probably sound familiar to you, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. So it is already law. However, the way that they do that is incredibly inconsistent across our Maryland institutions. Some of them do a great job, and I'll throw out Montgomery College, where Secretary Rye was leading the charge, and some of them do not a great job at all, and I won't say any names, but you might hear some today in testimony. So there are several reasons that I brought this bill. Many of you know that I have been an educational advocate for a lot of years. I used to work for a nonprofit in the Baltimore, Washington, Pennsylvania, Virginia area, and I did a lot of education, both K-12 schools and also at some of our state schools, colleges, and universities to help professors and others dealing with students realize their responsibilities and come up with creative accommodations or whatever the student needs to help them be successful in schools. But 2-3 years ago, a woman named Laurel Murray came to me with a group of students who were all students in Maryland schools. And she said, we're really having a lot of problems here, some of us as students and some of us as professors. All right. So I am going to, with your patience, I promise not to go too long, but usually I'm pretty short, read a little bit of her testimony, because even though she is here with us, if you want to stand, Laurel, she was unable to sign up appropriately, so I promised that I would share her words. This bill comes from her, and it also is a recommendation of the Office of Autism Coordinator and the Autism Stakeholder Group from this past year's report. So Laurel is an engineer. She's a former instructor at, should I say your? Yeah, you can say. Okay. Anne Arundel Community College and Howard Community College, who is herself hearing impaired. She also has ADHD, and she shares in her letter, which we will get to all of you, her experiences as a student in Maryland schools, where she took 3 years longer than other students to attain her master's in engineering. So obviously an incredibly capable young woman who was not able to achieve at the same rate as many of her classmates. And because she says now, because her disability accommodations were not appropriately implemented, even those that had been already approved. Right, and that's important to know. Right. She had to finish her advanced calculus courses. She had to fail and retake several courses because of disability accommodations, but she had to finish actually online when these schools could not actually accommodate her appropriately. So later, after she successfully got her master's, she was an instructor, and she reports that she received no help to support students with disabilities, and even after asking multiple people for help, trying to figure out how to help them, she didn't get anywhere. She was actually, in fact, and this is sort of a whistleblower situation at this point, she was told by her colleagues and the school to grade one of these students very, very harshly to encourage him to drop out of her class so that she wouldn't have to deal with it. Okay. She also reports that many students she taught came to her and shared stories about ill treatment or refusal to implement accommodations that had been pre-approved. So Laurel's with us and brought this bill to us because she believes that so much of these problems could have been avoided with mandatory training on something that we are already supposed to be doing by law. So thank you for that, Laurel. So and I'll just say, I know personally that it's true, because as a teaching assistant when I was in graduate school, and then as a baby university professor at a very large state institution, I taught introductory psychology classes to sometimes up to 200 to 300 students at a time. I was a psychologist with a PhD and still was not taught, nor did I know through my studies, how to appropriately accommodate these students who had different sorts of disability, ranging from hearing impaired like Laurel to visually impaired and other sorts of issues. So it would have made me so much better as a professor if I had been taught this information, and it would have helped my students so much more if I had had it. So I've also had personal stories with my own sons with disability who we made a very concerted effort looking for colleges that would support their special needs. And we had to do that out of state because I had already worked so much with our institutions within our state that I knew there was not a place here that I was comfortable sending them. And I just really want you to hear that, because I love Maryland and I love our school system. But they need to go about this in a better way. So I would like to help change that to support our Maryland schools and our Maryland students. So I do have to push back briefly on, there is a fiscal note on this bill. It's not a big one, but it's bigger than it should be. And the reason is that even though you have some testimony to the contrary, which is very surprising to me, from, I think, University of Maryland system, saying that they would have to create this program and that they don't have it easily accessible now. It is already law that they do this, right? And I have a list here of every single institution, public and private, in the state of Maryland, and a link to their disabilities training program. So the fact that they believe that they will need extra funding to create it, I hope you will look upon that very skeptically. Because here you go, and I'm happy to share that with anyone because my lovely staff did a great job and spent a lot of time putting that together. So this bill really doesn't have to create anything new. In the bill, MHEC can develop a program for our schools to use, or they can let them use these that are already developed with approval. And I haven't looked at every single one, but I've looked at enough to know that these are going to be okay. These are going to fulfill the letter of the law, right? So all Maryland schools should enforce compliance with this training that they already have, okay? And that's all this bill is asking them to do. So thank you for your time. I know that's a little longer than I usually go, but I'm so grateful for my panel, and I'd be happy to answer questions when they're done. Thank you. Who wants to go first?
My name. Good afternoon.
Oh, give me 1 second. You can start. Okay. Can you pull this closer?
Yeah.
It's really close. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Justin Stocker. I'm a resident of Anne Arundel County. I am with the Developmental Disabilities Council of Maryland, who has a written testimony on HB 912. This bill requires professors in colleges to have training on those with disabilities so that they can succeed the way I have in college. Yes, I am an individual with low vision as well as cerebral palsy. I graduated from Anne Arundel Community College in 2014 with an associate's degree in computer science. I was able to have, I was fortunate enough to have the accommodations such as extended time in the testing center, as well as having them read out tests for me while I dictated my answers. I was also fortunate enough to have note takers who I'm very grateful for, who took their time to take notes for me in class and who were compensated for their time, of course. Without these accommodations, I wouldn't have been able to succeed. I wouldn't have been able to succeed at my time at AACC. And I hope that others can be as fortunate as I am, because currently that is not the case. That is why I and the council am in support of HB 912. Thank you for your time.
I'm going to put this right in front of you. Here.
The next witness like to provide testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Sean Abraham, and I recently graduated from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, with my degree in political science. So I was set to graduate in December of 2023. Sadly, that did not happen. I took a required science class to graduate. It was an introductory physics class. And I took AP Physics in high school, so I knew that with the right accommodations, I could definitely succeed. Now, the content was highly visual. I did injure my hand in the beginning of the semester, and so I was having a lot of issues. So I went to the professor, and she was not very willing to accommodate, not willing to make exceptions or extended deadlines or extended times for tests or give alternative assignments. Maybe she thought that it would lower the academic standard of the class to do so, but if she knew more about accommodations, she might understand that that was not the whole purpose. That's not the purpose of accommodations, to do that. In fact, it's the opposite. So I spent this whole semester studying for physics with the help of friends who were describing graphs on this multitude of assignments to me. I was living in a state of anxiety because I was constantly emailing the professor, my disability office, trying to figure out what she would allow me to do. Sometimes she did give me certain accommodations, but they were at the last second and I didn't have time to implement them. Just a variety of different things. I sometimes didn't know if my assignments would be graded because perhaps they were late because I would already fallen behind. And so I worked so hard on this class, I couldn't focus on other classes much. And at the end of the day, I received an F in this class. I also failed another class as well because I was working on this class. To finish, most professors I do meet are great and they want to help. So I think for both sets of professors, those who are willing to learn and those who are not, this training would be vital for the success of students like me. Thank you.
Hi there. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and respected members of the House Appropriations Committee. For the record, my name is Charlotte Broderick, and I'm here today in my capacity as one of the co-directors of student advocacy with the Student Government Association of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And I'm here today to ask for a favorable report on House Bill 912. My work with UMBC's SGA revolves predominantly around ensuring an equitable and supportive environment for all students at the university, but specifically those students with disabilities. When I took this position in August of last year, students reported to me the noncompliance of certain instructors when it comes to administering student accommodations that are stipulated by their 504 plans. While avenues for recourse are in place at the university, no student should be denied their accommodations to begin with. House Bill 912 ensures that instructors are properly trained regarding institutional obligations outlined by federal laws like the Rehabilitation and Americans with Disability Acts. With this training, instructors will be educated about the essential nature of accommodations for students with disabilities, hopefully eliminating any further instances of noncompliance. I myself am very fortunate to have been provided with the resources and support in life that allowed me to be approved for accommodations at UMBC. These are luxuries that are not available to all students with disabilities. Even then, it was a struggle to get these accommodations, which I started to get in high school. Even with several recommendations from licensed professionals, I was still faced with questions from my high school administration that were like, are you sure you need these? Are you sure you don't want these just because classes are getting harder? Students who go through the often arduous process of getting these accommodations should be provided every assurance that they will not be withheld or improperly administered by an instructor. No student should feel that their success is restricted by the very individuals who are supposed to ensure it. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 912. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair, committee members. My name is Derek Coley, Executive Director of the Maryland Education Commission. Thank you, Delegate Guyton, for this critical piece of legislation, House Bill 912. The Maryland Education Commission is committed to expanding educational opportunities in Maryland by addressing educational access and equity. House Bill 912 seeks to train staff in higher education on managing students with disabilities. This legislation is essential to fostering an inclusive and equitable learning environment. Staff must be equipped with the knowledge and skills necessary to support students with diverse needs as institutions strive to provide equal access to education. The proper training ensures that this happens. Delegate Guyton talked about Secretary Rye's long-term history with respect to students with disabilities. It's appropriate in terms of House Bill 912, encouraging institutions across the state of Maryland to double down their efforts to address those needs for those students. By prioritizing staff training, institutions can improve retention and graduation rates among students with disabilities, ultimately advancing their broader goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Investing in this training is not just a matter of compliance, it is a commitment to ensuring that all students, regardless of ability, have the opportunity to reach their full academic potential. Again, we encourage a favorable report on House Bill 912.
Much to the bill sponsor and the panel. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Delegate McCombs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Guyton, I got a couple questions. Okay, nobody has money, right? So what I was thinking is you have Kennedy Krieger. Is it possible that you could align with them and get somebody to help develop a curriculum? That's one thought. The other thing is Blumberg has a lot of money, right? And it seems like it wouldn't take a lot of money to do what you want to do. And, you know, I think everybody could probably benefit from it because I know we have a couple, well, we have one person that, and I thought he was an attorney, and I don't think he is, but he sure sounds like one. So anyway, I just think there's a way to what do I want, you know, and there's other philanthropy groups that might, because it's not a lot, and they could even probably do a film or something, you know, interactive film, and then have like a, you know, a test afterwards or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's not a big ask. Yeah. And quite honestly, it provides the individuals that want to work and want to, you know, expand their, you know, education and everything. It gives them, you know, a little, it just is motivating for them. Mm-hmm. And they can be great role models. So anyway, just a thought.
Thank you so much for that question and suggestion. I know you also have been an advocate for education for kids with disabilities in the past, so I appreciate that from you. And just since I'm here, thank you for the shout out to Kennedy Krieger, and I do sit on their board, so they do great work. I would say that if that were necessary, then all of that would be a really good idea. The point is, it isn't necessary because the programs are already available. Right. So, and online modules already available. So these are things that, according to the bill, they can do it online. They can use the programs they already have, as long as they meet basic standards, which I'm assuming that the council at University of Maryland has already determined. But if not, MHEC would say, you know, this is not a good one. So there's really not much development to be done at this point. What we're asking for them really is not to develop it, but to make it mandatory for people who are going to come into contact with their students. And that, we spoke about professors up here, but that also includes TAs, teaching assistants, instructors, adjunct instructors. Those are some of the folks who are least likely to have the experience with these students, so they need it even more. I know that one of my sons is a TA right now, and I'm pretty sure that he needs to know a lot more about how to handle different disabilities. So thank you so much for those suggestions, and thanks for your support of this idea.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, great. We have additional witnesses who are signed up for, so if they could make their way up. We have.
Thank you, Chair.
Sharon Manecki with the National Federation of the Blind of Maryland. Sharon Manecki.
No, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't planning on testifying, but I just said ditto.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, wonderful, beautiful. All right, thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, wonderful. Well, we do have additional virtual witnesses, and they'll be joining us online. Katie York and William Blake. There you go. William Blake, good to see you. 2 minutes.
William Blake, you have 2 minutes. You can start.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee. My name is William Blake, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at UMBC. Although today I appear in my individual capacity, I have submitted written testimony because I was not sure if I would be done teaching to be done in time to testify in favor of House Bill 912, but I'm very pleased to be here along with two of my outstanding former students, Sean and Charlotte. I'm happy to answer your questions. I wanted to go over one more thing that wasn't included in my written remarks. UMBC's Student Disability Service Office, or SDS, does really great work. At the beginning of each semester, every faculty member will get a memo indicating which of their students have approved accommodations and what those approved accommodations are. And I think a lot of faculty assume that if they comply with the memo, that they've done everything that they need to do. And in reality, complying with the memo is just the beginning. Our SDS office has programming. It schedules events. It has resources on its website for faculty. And I think a lot of faculty don't take advantage of that because they think all they need to do is honor the memos that they get. And I think that this bill serves two purposes. One is that it would fix any negative experiences that our students are encountering in the classroom, but it also can make the classroom experience even better for our students, because in general, our faculty are diligent and caring. All what they need is to be prompted to think more systematically about how they interact with their students, how they assess their students. And so I urge a favorable report, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have one more witness, Katie York. 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Katie York, and I'm here to express my strong support for HB 0912. I'd like to thank Delegate Guyton for introducing this bill. I've worked in Maryland community colleges for 16 years in various administrative roles, including curriculum writing and workforce program development. I've also had the pleasure of teaching continuing education courses for the last 8 years, and I'm currently a student pursuing an MS in disability services and higher education. I'm also here as a person with non-apparent disabilities. I have ADHD and I am autistic. I've exercised my legal right to access accommodations during my MS program through my school's disability office. I come here to comment how I've witnessed firsthand as a student, staff member, instructor, the challenges that come with navigating higher education for people with disability. There's really a significant gap between the instructor in the classroom knowledge of those existing federal laws related to disability accommodations. That lack of knowledge, not only can it be like a legal liability, but it also is a really negative experience for both the instructors and the students. I've seen amazing instructors inadvertently create barriers for disabled students because they didn't have the training that they needed regarding those existing federal laws related to disabilities. Now that means the student is responsible for advocating for themselves. They may not necessarily know all of their legal rights, and so they may end up having not only a negative experience, but end up maybe potentially being unsuccessful and dropping out of class or the program. It's also just exhausting and stressful for an individual who does know their legal rights to constantly have to educate someone in a position of power.
Thank you. You can just wrap it up, couple conclusions.
Sure, yeah,
sentences.
just as noted that Delegate, many of these schools already have trainings. It's just not mandatory for all instructors, and that's what's so important about this bill, is that it's not going to be a huge impact requiring a lot of money to create new programs, just making sure that information is more widely available to the existing employees and future staff.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Are there questions for the online witnesses? Okay, thank you both for being here so much. Have a great day. That concludes the bill hearing. Let's move to House Bill 1462, Delegate Solomon, and please bring your panel up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Last of the day.
For the record, Delegate Jared Solomon here to present House Bill 1462, the Maryland Campus Act. And I want to just start off by saying I'm also here in my capacity as the co-chair of the Maryland Jewish Caucus. Our cross-file former esteemed member of this committee, Senator Hedelman, and I have put the bill in, and it is one of the top priorities of the Legislative Jewish Caucus. I want to just say we approached this bill starting in the fall because we know there's a serious problem on campuses across the country addressing hate and bias incidents long before what occurred in the Middle East on October 7th. Obviously, that is impossible to divorce from this conversation. And I want to give, I'll touch on a couple of stats that I think are really critical. And I know some folks will share some of their own personal experiences. And it was really important for us to think through policies that we knew would not just apply to the Jewish community, but would apply to all communities, because I think the statistics really bear out that it is not just the Jewish community that has been a victim of an incredible increase in hate and bias incidents. It's really a variety of different communities, and everything that was in this bill was looked at through the lens of how does this apply to help everybody, to make all of our campuses a safer and welcoming and secure place for all. You're going to hear from the opposition that this bill was modeled off of an Ohio piece of legislation. That is correct. As many of you know, we all look to other states. The Ohio bill, while I don't always agree with everything that comes out of the state of Ohio, was something, a long work product from both Republicans and Democrats, some of the most liberal, some of the most conservative, was really an incredibly collaborative product. And we talked to one legislator in particular who was really helpful in helping us kind of figure out what they had done. And then we obviously took this and we modified it heavily to represent what we have here in the state. We're really proud of what we have in Maryland. And so we don't want to certainly not asking to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We think a lot of what's in this bill is really strengthening and putting some guardrails in place. We lift up, frankly, a lot of really good models, and I'll touch on those as I go through the bill. A lot of really great things that are working on some campuses in the state that we want to see brought statewide. We want to make sure that every campus has got the same kind of protections that some of our campuses do. So just want to touch on a couple of stats real quick. So this is from the Anti-Defamation League, and this is, again, before October 7th, that there was a 338% increase from 2013 to 2023, but obviously that includes the entirety of that year, 338% increase in anti-Semitic incidents. The data, and there's testimony, unfortunately they weren't able to join us in person from the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, who was supportive of the bill, that they saw a record number of hate and bias incidents reported to the Maryland State Police from 2017 to 2022. Again, before the political issues and conflict ongoing in the Middle East. On April 2024, Institute for Social Policy and Understanding report shows that 84% of Muslim students in higher education said they experienced discrimination in the last year. And then finally, hate crime stats that were released by the FBI, again, in incidents up to 2022, show that the highest number of recorded incidents since they had started tracking them since 1991. So again, I just wanted to set the record here that, obviously, again, what has happened has caused inflammation across college campuses, really across, I think, our body politic. But this is an issue that was longstanding, that was growing, frankly, and really, in a really unfortunate way, was growing in our political discourse and in our society at large long before any more recent incidents. So again, what does the bill do? I'm just going to go through a couple of things in here real quick. So first off, it makes sure that campuses have policies in place, which again, that are anti-discrimination, anti-hate, anti-bias policies, which most of our campuses already have. This is just sort of to reinforce. And I will say one of the amendments, unfortunately, we didn't get the full drafted amendment back from the amendment office in time, but we do have a sponsor amendment that Senator Hedelman and I submitted, and I've shared with a couple of folks on the committee. We adopted what the Civil Rights Commission asked us to do, which was to make sure that we included every protected class in that call out. And that was not a deliberate, we weren't trying to exclude anybody. We were actually just trying to highlight sort of what the crux of this bill was. So we want to make sure there's nothing that leaves anybody out. So that is one of the amendments that we filed. The other piece is it requires training. We want to make sure that staff, students, and faculty are trained on that policy, that they're trained on how to react, that faculty are trained to be able to share information with students about how you report these types of incidents. And again, we've worked really closely with the higher ed community. I want to specifically recognize College Park and UMBC as two really wonderful partners in helping us think through the details of this legislation. And again, these are kind of trainings that our universities often do anyway, so we're happy to have them included in part of those trainings. There's another amendment there to clarify that these trainings can be included in existing trainings already. They can just add additional modules. The next piece is a complaint and adjudication system. So again, this is building off of a best practice that most of our campuses already have. And you're going to see in the opposition testimony that there is a call out of sort of this anonymous, we ask, one of the requirements is that there should be an anonymous reporting requirement. That is, again, basically standard procedure for the university system. That's not standard procedure for every single school in the state. This obviously applies to USM, state affiliated, our privates, and our community colleges. But there are anonymous reporting abilities already. Not everybody always wants to share their information. It's obviously caveated when you look on these reporting tools that if you don't share your information with us, we may not be able to investigate it fully. But that is already a well-established procedure for campuses across the state. And then we want to make sure that there's a way that we often hear from students, they don't really know necessarily where to report. That often there's almost too many offices that you can report to, but then it's not clear where it gets funneled to. It's not clear who is sort of adjudicating it, what the follow-up is, or the disciplinary procedures are, obviously within FERPA, which is the protection of educational data. But we want students to know that there is one spot, and we want them to at least get a follow-up, right? We don't want, if they have reported it, they deserve to know at least what the outcome was, again, within legal reason. The next piece is requiring institutions to publish their time, place, and manner restrictions or their time, place, and manner policies on their websites. And again, there's a lot of opposition testimony related to that. There is an amendment to clarify there. Our hope with that piece of it, and again, we've had lots of really productive conversations, frankly, with some of the groups that are here in opposition that resulted in some of these amendments. So we're open to make additional amendments. We're always willing to have productive conversations with folks. What our hope was in there was, again, most of the institutions, our understanding in the state, already have these types of policies. We just want to make sure they're clearly stated and clearly available for people to know. For folks on both sides, frankly, of any issue. We want to make sure that if a university has run afoul of those policies, that it is clearly available for a community to know how they did that. And that can be adjudicated and dealt with. One of the clarifications in the amendment that we submitted was, again, around when police or law enforcement are called to disturbances on campus. The amendment that we submitted clarifies that it's essentially, we wanted to make sure we're not requiring an institution to have a policy on when they engage with police, but we just want to know that if it says when, if, or how they have a policy, that again, that policy is published and clearly available for everybody in the community to understand. The last couple of pieces of the bill really are, again, about how we bring the community together and how students on campus and student organizations really feel like their voices are being heard. So we require senior official in the university, again, we leave it to the discretion of the institutions, to have regular meetings at least once a year with, and we changed the language in the amendment to show a recognized group. We have approved in there. It, again, was intended to be a group that is, a recognized official campus organization, that they have an opportunity to meet, again, at least once a year, probably should be more, that's best practice, to go through these types of issues, the issues that are outlined in this bill, that if groups have grievances, there are issues that are not being addressed on campus, that they know they will have at least one opportunity every year, if not more, to go through these issues and make sure that they are addressed. The other piece in here that actually, again, we used best practices from states around the country is a provision that we took from a bill in California that passed last year to make sure that groups are being represented fully in diversity offices, that at a bare minimum, the 5 most targeted groups or victims of hate and bias incidents as reported by the state police, that those groups are included in the diversity offices on campuses at a bare minimum. That's not the only group, and some of these probably are included, but again, we have heard that some groups get left out, that they've had issues with diversity offices or whatever we're gonna call them, community offices, that they're not fully represented or included. And we wanted to make sure, again, that the groups that are most targeted by hate and bias incidents, again, from the state police, from their database, are included, again, to make our campuses as inclusive as possible. The last piece is a commission that MHEC will convene of a variety of different stakeholders. And, you know, I've done enough of these bills to know that when you outline a commission, you always leave somebody out. There's just, you can't always get everybody, so we're open, obviously, to additions and other representatives for that group. But the idea for that is USM has done some of these on their own individual campuses, and they've been really, really productive to create some best practice policies. They are not mandated that whatever comes out of that commission has to be adopted at every campus, whether it's public or private, but we wanted there to be an opportunity for folks to come up with some best practices, to share best practices across the board. Again, to the chair, again, lifting up College Park, they have proactively created their own hate and bias reporting dashboard that is available to every member of the College Park community. And that was because they felt like the reporting that they were required to do to the federal government was leaving a lot of incidents out, and it was not a true reflection of some of the issues that, frankly, they were having on campus that they were addressing. And that is, again, a really positive example of a campus saying, we know we have some issues that we're going to work through as a community, and we're going to be really open and transparent about it. And so actually the data reporting tool that we emphasize in this bill is based off of the best example at College Park. The last piece that my colleagues will appreciate, we do have a fiscal note with this bill, and it's because we created a $500,000 grant program to be distributed by the chancellor of the university system, and that is for interfaith collaboration, for student groups that want to work through conflict, they want to work through issues, and maybe they need a little bit of money to bring a speaker on campus, or maybe to do a trip or to do something together. And again, we think that is a really good way to support. And we know there have been a lot of really wonderful things that have happened on our campuses across the state, and so we want there to be a little bit of money to help that grow. Tough fiscal times, so we just threw that number in there. But again, we think it's really important to lift up the interfaith engagement between communities and to be able to support that. The last thing that I will say in closing before I turn it over to the panel is, again, there's a statement here from the Commission on Civil Rights, and they say HB 1462 is one important component in Maryland's overall efforts that seeks to build a stronger, more accountable campus community in order to effectively combat acts of hate and bias that are becoming increasingly more common on college and university campuses. And I wanted to just make sure that I closed with that because we really appreciated their support and collaboration on this bill, and would just urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. My name is Luda Saharov, and I'm here in support of House Bill 1462, the Campus Act. Thank you so much, Delegate Solomon, for your leadership on this important bill. I'm testifying today in two capacities. First, as the Assistant Regional Director at the Anti-Defamation League's Washington, D.C. office, but also as a recent graduate who has personally experienced anti-Semitism on campus. My experiences as a student are actually what led me to this work at ADL and why I'm here today, because I know firsthand what it feels like when universities fail to act. I graduated from the University of Oregon in 2024, where I was deeply involved in Jewish student life. And like so many others, I faced hostility, intimidation, and institutional inaction when it came to anti-Semitism. And sadly, as you're going to hear today from the students that are here, I'm not alone in these experiences. In just the past year, according to incidents reported to ADL, Jewish college students in Maryland have been harassed and told, "You killed Jesus, go F yourself," just for wearing a Star of David. A professor at Towson University told students that Jews are too defensive about the Holocaust. Outside a Jewish sorority house, a car displayed a sign justifying Hamas's attacks. These are not isolated incidents. They reflect a growing climate of anti-Semitism that universities have been unable or unwilling to address effectively. But I want to emphasize that this bill is not just about Jewish students. House Bill 1462 ensures that Maryland's colleges and universities establish policies to address all racial, ethnic, and religious violence, harassment, and intimidation. Additionally, it aligns with the State of Maryland's hate bias report. Hate in any form is unacceptable, and universities must be equipped with the right tools to respond. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report on this bill to ensure Maryland universities take stronger action against hate and harassment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee. For the record, Abby Snyder, Director of Government Relations for the Baltimore Jewish Council, which represents the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore and its agencies, here today in support of HB 1462. You heard Delegate Solomon explain in great length what this bill does, so I'm going to spend my time sharing examples of why the Baltimore Jewish Council sees this bill as incredibly necessary. The incidents of anti-Semitism on our college campuses have been occurring for years, well before the October 7th massacre in Israel and resulting war. Jewish students at Hopkins University have found mezuzahs ripped off of their door frames in dorm rooms. At Towson University, Jewish students have been followed and harassed on their way to class, and Jewish fraternity students were assaulted on a Saturday night at the conclusion of the Shabbat observance, while their attackers shouted anti-Semitic slurs. Jewish students on the University of Maryland's downtown professional campuses have reported being harassed when walking back and forth to synagogue for Shabbat. Kill the Jews signs have been posted around campus at UMBC, and this past fall, students walking back to their dorm rooms from Friday night Shabbat services at UMBC Chabad were harassed and threatened by unidentified individuals in an SUV. This last incident occurred not once, but twice, prompting UMBC's president to send a campus-wide message condemning anti-Semitism. It is imperative that Jewish students feel safe as they seek a higher education. By establishing proper policies and procedures to address the harassment on college campuses, there will be a sense of safety and security for those attending Maryland's institutions. And for these reasons, we urge a favorable report on HB 1462.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chang and committee members, for hearing my testimony today. I would also like to thank Delegate Solomon for introducing this crucial bill and advocating for students. My name is Zach Einstein-Astroff. I'm a sophomore at the University of Maryland, and I'm testifying in support of House Bill 1462. I'm here today because the reality of being a Jewish student in America has changed dramatically in just a few short months. Since October 7th, Jewish students like myself have been forced to shift from simply enjoying our campus communities to fighting for our basic dignity and safety. I have experienced and heard accounts of hate that no student of any background should ever have to experience. To name a few examples, I have been told that the Jewish people don't deserve to be alive anywhere on earth. I've seen our main plazas desecrated with chalked phrases such as Holocaust 2024 and Holocaust 2.0. I've seen other Jewish students harassed for being visibly Jewish. I was told of Jewish students being spat at on their walks to class. I've heard from a friend about how their professor singled them out in class for being Jewish, being made to stand in front of their 300-person lecture hall and interrogated with a barrage of questions, tying their Judaism to the war in Gaza. The bottom line is, anti-Semitism is becoming normalized at UMD, just as it is across the country. The Anti-Defamation League finds that there have been 487 anti-Semitic incidents in the state of Maryland since 2023, and those are just the ones that are reported. Jewish families now have to discuss how safe different campuses are when evaluating college options. As the public image of many of our nation's once esteemed universities rot at the hands of rampant anti-Semitism, the question arises, will Maryland's universities join this growing list of colleges nationwide that have become breeding grounds for virulent anti-Semitism? Or will you take a stand against hatred and protect your Jewish students and all students? By voting yes on House Bill 1462, you send a clear message that Maryland will not tolerate anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. You will stand on the right side of history, ensuring that all students can pursue their education without fear. Thank you for your time and your commitment to protecting all students.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. I am Deborah Miller, the Director of Maryland and Community Relations for the JCRC of Greater Washington, and we represent over 100 social service agencies, synagogues, and schools in the region. We have a robust education division which focuses on combating anti-Semitism in the schools and promoting safe, hate-free learning environments for all students. I'm here today in support of House Bill 1462. By mandating that schools track hate bias incidents and train faculty on how to respond to such incidents, the Maryland Campus Act helps ensure that Jewish students will feel as safe and supported as everybody else on campus. Last spring at Montgomery County Community College, the JCRC took a lead role in addressing several anti-Semitic incidents. We worked closely with the college's president and administrators to call out professors who were spewing hateful rhetoric and to condemn a planned screening of an anti-Semitic film, Occupation of the American Mind. Since then, we have continued to collaborate with the administration to ensure policies regarding anti-Semitism are updated. We have led trainings about understanding anti-Semitism and have worked to build up both Jewish life and interfaith programming on the campus. The Maryland Campus Act would have been a huge asset to us had it been in place. It would have provided a roadmap for the school and established policies needed to address all forms of hate. We made tremendous progress at Montgomery County Community College, and with this legislation, our success can be replicated at other schools. College campuses must be places of learning and not hotbeds for hate. For these reasons, we ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1462.
Vice Chair Chang, other members of the committee, thank you for giving the opportunity to testify today. I also want to thank Delegate Solomon for introducing this legislation. My name is Benjamin Slifkin. I'm a junior architect student at the University of Maryland, College Park. I stand here today to strongly support the Campus Act. As one of the few Jewish students in the architecture program, I have personally faced exclusion and hostility. Despite UMD's code of conduct promoting respect for all students, it has not been upheld for Jewish students. In one instance, my personal desk was covered with Palestinian propaganda stickers, including messages such as "from the river to the sea" or imagery depicting Israel covered in blood. Additionally, classmates have called me a dirty Zionist Jew behind my back, purely because I look Jewish, despite me never having publicly expressed my political opinions, ever in the classroom. Countless Maryland students have experienced rampant anti-Semitism simply for being Jewish. The harassment of Jewish students on campus and around campus has been relentless, ranging from an overwhelming amount of anti-Semitic messaging to verbal attacks by strangers. For example, one of my friends had his dorm door vandalized with hateful messaging. Even the application Yik Yak, an anonymous messaging board for college students, has become a haven for anti-Semitism. It has reached a point where many of us no longer feel safe wearing our religious symbols such as a yarmulke or a Star of David. It feels like every time I've walked to services, someone would yell "Free Palestine" or "Dirty Jew" at me or my friends. Even in the library, we couldn't study in peace without being secretly recorded and mocked online. The Campus Act is so important as it mandates strong anti-hate policies, increasing security, and streamlined reporting system to protect students from harassment. These measures will create a safer and more inclusive environment for all students, including Jewish students who have faced discrimination. No student should have to endure harassment or intimidation, and I strongly urge you to vote yes on this bill to ensure a campus where all students can feel safe and supported. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Chang and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Weinstein, a junior at University of Maryland, and I am here in support of House Bill 1462, the Campus Act. First, I also want to thank Delegate Solomon and other sponsors for their leadership in this important bill. For centuries, Jewish communities have persevered against hatred. My presence here today is a testament to that resilience, but no student should have to be resilient just to make it through their education. I came to the University of Maryland with hopes of learning, growing, and contributing to a diverse academic community. Instead, I encountered anti-Semitism that made me question whether my identity was welcome. I have seen members of our student government use anti-Semitic slurs, and I have witnessed student-led clubs that promote violence against Jews as a valid form of resistance. The hostility extends beyond student groups. Last year, a student in my dorm plastered slogans on her door reading "From the river to the sea," a phrase that calls for the eradication of the Jewish state and, by extension, the safety of my friends and family. Every day, I walked past that door feeling unseen and unsafe, wondering whether my university truly valued my presence as a Jewish student. When anti-Semitic incidents occur, we need assurance that our concerns will be taken seriously and that institutions have structured policies in place to address them effectively. Too often, responses from university leadership are inconsistent, inadequate, or non-existent. That is why House Bill 1462 is so important. It will require colleges and universities to create stronger institutional processes to protect students from discrimination, harassment, and targeted intimidation. I'm not just here for myself and my Jewish peers. I am here for my Muslim friends who experience Islamophobia and also don't know where to turn. Every student deserves to feel safe on campus, and no one should feel like an outsider in their own community. Passing this bill is a critical step towards making that a reality. I urge you to vote in support of HB 1462 to ensure that all students in Maryland are protected from hate and discrimination. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to the bill sponsor and to the witnesses. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Delegate McComas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Solomon, I just wanted to ask you a quick question. I had the opportunity to go to General's anti-bias over the summer. He was up in Harford County, and it was very instructive. I just wondered, have you had a chance to talk to him? I noticed that when I Googled Maryland Attorney General's anti-hate and bias, it says, you know, they have a number to report the hate crimes portal for the universities. But no, complaints of student harassment or bullying should be directly to the school, college, or university. But, you know, they're collecting all the data, and I think he's being kind of tasked by the governor to do that. That was when, so I mean, he might be a good resource that you might want to talk to, if you haven't. You may
Yeah,
have.
I was going to say, we haven't had particularly robust conversations with the Attorney General. We focus more on the university system and individual campuses, but absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's sent, because he's got one guy that's just dedicated to collecting the information, so it's, I think, state police.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel for your testimony. As Afro-Latino, queer, and immigrant, I think I hit the jackpot when it comes to hate. And I think, as serious as the issue is, I want to ensure that we are not in the process infringing on free speech rights. And so I'm looking at the testimony from the ACLU of Maryland, citing serious concerns around free speech. Last year, I was invited and attended a peaceful protest on University of Maryland's campus that was organized by students that were protesting the policies of this current government. And the concerns that I have is that individual students who choose to exercise their free speech would then be caught up or wrongfully, or there'll be a conflation of their advocacy against the current right-wing apartheid government in Israel with anti-Semitism. And that is the concern that I have, as does the ACLU. And so can you speak to not just my, but a lot of other folks' concerns around free speech on college campuses and the protection of students who may disagree on policy and not being impacted by the intent of this bill?
Yeah, Delegate, I appreciate the question. I mean, you know, I think we have a slight disagreement with the ACLU. I mean, we went through this bill and we worked with UMBC and with College Park and with the university system to make sure, first and foremost, that this was not intending to infringe on anybody's rights. And I will say, I think, you know, again, you can't divorce, obviously, the last year and a half and the political conflicts that have occurred from the larger conversation here. But I think our hope was that on all sides, right, if universities have taken actions against students, frankly, who were peacefully protesting, we believe that provisions in this bill will help protect that, make the entire process clearer for everybody. I mean, we heard stories from folks. Again, I spent hours talking with folks in opposition to this bill. And I will say from the get-go, you know, I think folks of good faith can disagree. That's part of the wonderful role down here, is sometimes we just don't agree on things, even though we know that our perspectives are valid and that we're all coming from a place of good faith. I heard stories from a lot of the folks who I talked to where, frankly, things that happened to them I thought were outrageous, and that some of the policies in this bill will help them, like the reporting requirements. You know, one person discussed the idea that they and a couple of other friends had been doxxed. You know, we don't know when somebody is making an incredible amount of anonymous reports, again, under the current system as it is in place across most campuses in the state. You can submit an anonymous report. We, as the General Assembly, don't get any data from those campuses on what those reports are. So somebody could be doxxed. We ask the universities to tell us, one of the reporting requirements here is whether they were substantiated or not. So we would know if there were, you know, 1,000 anonymous complaints and they were all unsubstantiated, we would know that. And then we could take action to say, hey, you know, clearly there's issues on your campus here that maybe you're not addressing appropriately, or MHEC could do that, or the chancellor could do that. So, you know, I think you sit down with 10 of us, you're probably going to get 20 different opinions on the conflict. I don't think everybody's opinion is consistent here as well. But our North Star in this bill was really, how do we create protections and enhance protections to make sure that everybody, regardless of your political viewpoint, is protected on campus?
Appreciate that response. Just one follow-up question, Mr. Chair. And before that, I also appreciate you mentioning doxing, because that is also something that I've heard from a number of not just Muslim, but Christian students on college campuses. I myself, being a Christian, certainly concerned by that. But the next question that I have for you is that I'm looking at, the folks that sign up in support, and I know this is something that we're trying to do for all students, protect Black, Latino, LGBTQIA+. And I didn't see any testimony from any organizations representing Black, Latino, and LGBTQIA+ students, basically communities that I identify with. And I'm curious as to whether you did any outreach and what was your conversations about that?
We did, yeah, and I know, we heard a bill earlier on Title VI protections, and I know Free State Justice was strongly in support of that. This dovetails a lot with that, and again, actually, we updated the original call out in the first part of the bill to make sure that we weren't excluding any protected statuses. So again, that's a sponsor amendment that I think if we had written in the bill to begin with, and this was a very complex bill to draft, so we didn't actually get the final language back until I think maybe a few short days before the drop deadline, so we didn't have a ton of time to sort of shop a more finished product. We've had a lot of really good conversations with the Governor's Interfaith Council, again, the Commission on Civil Rights. I think, again, the blessing and the curse of the 90-day session is you don't always have as much time, especially when you don't have a finished product of a bill. But again, I think I pride myself on being one of the most transparent lawmakers down here. My cell phone is on my website, which maybe I'll live to regret one day, but, have had, again, many conversations, particularly in the last few weeks, with groups that we may not agree on, but I think the conversations have created very productive changes to the bill that are evident in the amendments. And would be happy to continue to have those conversations.
Yep, I appreciate that, and thanks for the reply, Mr. Chair, appreciate it. I think I've already shared some of those concerns, and hopefully we can flesh those out as it relates to amendment. I think the intent of the bill is good. Just want to make sure that we are not infringing on the free speech rights. We're also protecting students who are wrongfully doxxed, and we're protecting all students and not just a few. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Does the committee have the amendments? Do you have them back yet?
I don't. I shared just the draft that we submitted with the subcommittee chair.
Okay. When will we get the actual amendments? Do you know?
Hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll make sure they might even be in my inbox today or now, but they weren't before the hearing, unfortunately.
Good. Any other questions for this panel? Delegate Lewis?
Sure, I had a very quick one. I appreciate the sponsor and the effort. For those who know me, two things led me down this pathway of being here with these fine people who I serve with, which was one, the recession and potential tuition increases, which led to organizing. And the second one was I led a student group on University of Maryland's campus that was founded by Black students from Prince George's County and Baltimore City and Jewish students predominantly from Montgomery and New York City. Because of instances of hate. For those who don't know, quick history lesson, there's the bus on University of Maryland's campus that everyone uses to go to games and whatnot. That was founded by the Black Student Union because of instances of hate that the university would not address. So they created their own essential vehicle service to get people to and from campus safely. What I appreciate about this approach is that you're putting the onus on the institutions of higher education to put together policies to ensure safety. I think we all can agree that going to college is a space of uncomfortability intentionally, right? But safety is the minimum. I just, look forward to those amendments coming. I thank you for bringing it forward, and any help you need, I'm here to lend a hand. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for endeavoring.
Thank you, Delegate Lewis.
Any other questions? Panel. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the bill, Delegate. Thank you all for being with us. Thanks for your advocacy. All right, we're going to move to unfavorable. We're going to do 5 at a time, 2 minutes per witness, and then if you get your name called, come on up, and we'll take questions as a panel. Susan Karen Ruba Abdikadir, David Friund, Zaneb Chaudhry, and Evelyn Frankel.
Okay. My name is Susan Karen, but I'm speaking on behalf of student organizations from Johns Hopkins University, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Maryland Institute College of Art, Towson University, and University of Maryland College Park, united in strong opposition to House Bill 1462. These are their words. Representing dozens of students across the state, we stand together in our view that while the bill claims to combat hate speech, its actual effect would be to restrict free speech. This bill gives campus administrators the power to determine what is considered acceptable speech, limiting students' ability to engage in political expression. We are not able to stand here today due to our concern that revealing our identities publicly in opposition will lead to doxing, intimidation, and harassment from both university administration and members of the public. This is a clear demonstration of the way that this bill would significantly curtail our right to free speech and expression. Instead, we have compiled our testimonies. This is what students are saying. Each time there's a protest, we are afraid of the university going after each of our leaders and attendees, like they have previously. The students targeted for these meetings were specifically students of color, organizers or not. Members of the community who are already marginalized due to their racial identities are now also being picked out anonymously and penalized for their mere participation in peaceful protests. We have reported instances of silent, peaceful protesters being physically and verbally intimidated by campus police. Rather than fostering a campus environment that encourages open dialogue and critical thinking, this bill would turn universities into places of surveillance and repression. If passed, this bill would signal to students that their voices, especially those advocating for justice and equality, are not welcome. I urge you to reaffirm students' rights and shared democratic values.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Ruba Abu Khader, and I am here today as a Palestinian-American mother who believes in the freedoms and the democratic values that make this country great. I came here because I want my children to grow up in a nation that encourages open dialogue and respect the right to dissent, not one that punishes students for standing up for justice. HB 1462 claims to promote inclusivity and protect students, but in reality, it threatens the very principles of free speech and academic freedom. The bill's vague definition of harassment and intimidation leave too much room for subjective interpretation. And when institutions are required to report and monitor speech in this way, students may become afraid to express their beliefs, fear and retaliation or punishment simply for speaking out. As a mother, I want my children to attend universities where they are challenged, where they learn to debate, where they are encouraged to think critically. I don't want them to be taught that fighting or standing for human rights is dangerous, or that speaking about injustices could lead to disciplinary action. If this bill passes, the message it sends is loud and clear, that some voices are welcome and others are not. And this is not the kind of future or the kind of democracy I want for my children, you want for your children or for the students in Maryland. So I urge you to vote against HB 1462 and ensure that Maryland's campuses remain safe of true learning, true discussion, and growth, and to uphold the fundamental rights that have made this country a beacon of free speech and democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Barnes, members of the committee. I apologize for going back and forth. Our other bill was just called, so trying to multitask here, and I've become a pro at it thanks to this assembly. On behalf of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, I am here today to oppose the Campus Act. Our organization encourages and fully supports efforts to combat hate crimes, discrimination, and violence targeting all marginalized communities, especially in our institutions of learning, Muslims, Arabs, Jews, Christians, people of all walks of life. These incidents, our office has documented over 600 incidents and complaints and requests for assistance in 2024. These incidents include students who've had their headscarves pulled, who have been doxxed, who have been handed pagers, who have been spat at, pushed, and shoved. and we are deeply concerned by the campus climate. However, we do not believe that this bill is the right step forward. This bill, while it includes provisions addressing anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of bias, its mandate for institutions of higher education to adopt and enforce policies regulating the time, place, and manner restriction of expressive activities introduces broad and vague standards that risk being weaponized to suppress free speech. These policies have historically been used and abused to silence student groups advocating particularly for human rights and free speech issues of heightened importance amid Israel's ongoing daily violence and aggression in Gaza and the West Bank. These accounts are documented by renowned international human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem, as well as in documentary films like No Other Land, which recently just won an Oscar on Sunday evening, despite being blocked by U.S. distributors seeking to suppress these narratives from the mainstream American discourse. This bill's requirement for institutions to involve campus security or law enforcement in response to significant disruptions raises significant concerns over the vague language and the potential criminalization of student-led advocacy. And I know my time is almost up, but you have my written testimony before you, and I encourage you to please oppose this bill for the reasons that are listed in that.
Thank you. And just, can you give us your name?
Oh, Zainab Chaudhry with CARE, the Council on American
Gotcha.
Islamic
Okay,
Relations,
thank you.
for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Evelyn Frankel, and as a Jewish Marylander, I have a very different perspective than the sponsors of HB 1462, which I oppose, as I believe it will chill the vital exchange of ideas on campus. This and $500,000 price tag in this year of spending cuts. If the bill were truly broadly intended, why
Ms.
are
Chaudhry,
all
I know you have another bill. We do ask that you take questions here. So we'll do it right after the next two witnesses, and hopefully we'll.
Okay. Do I get my time back?
Yep, you do. Go ahead. We'll let you go an extra few
I'm
seconds.
talking as fast as I can.
That's fair. All right,
Okay.
you got it.
As Delegate Acevero implied, if this bill was truly broadly intended, why were the only people on Delegate Solomon's panel Jewish? Does he not understand about coalition building? And if he does, why was he not able to build one here? Like a number of bills of this ilk, this bill purports to be content neutral, protecting all students from hate and discrimination. There are laws as well as campus regulations that already accomplish this. The esteemed members here know this far better than I. This bill will potentially criminalize free speech that holds the Israeli government responsible for the near total decimation of an area that is home to over 2 million Palestinians. Think Chicago or Houston, flattened. I am ashamed as a Jew to say this, especially given my family's experience with genocide and ethnic cleansing in 1930s Austria. Trained as a child that never again means never again for anyone, it never ceases to shock and pain me that my co-religionists continue to allow their honestly come-by trauma to blind them to the harm done to others in their name. Choosing, quote, 5 demographic groups in the state subject to the highest percentage of hate bias incidents, unquote, turns reporting into a quota system akin to parking tickets per day. The most complaints wins. Who feels entitled and safe to file these complaints? White people. Who among these marginalized groups are also white? Jews. I speak as a Jew who identifies also as white and middle class and privileged in the context of those identities. A close Jewish friend who taught at Columbia for decades tells me that her professor friends, and this person is herself a Holocaust refugee arriving in this country at age 13 from a devoured Europe, are afraid of their Jewish students, afraid that they will be reported and slandered under just such a codified vilification policy. Please vote no on this bill and certainly don't spend my tax dollars on it.
Hello to the chair and the committee. Thank you. My name is David Freund. I'm a resident of Maryland District 18 and here representing the Montgomery County Jewish Collective. I'm also a parent of a Jewish UMD student and a professor of history at College Park, with 3 decades of experience publishing and teaching about the history of racial, religious, and ethnic discrimination in the United States. This includes a lot of public-facing work, including a major PBS documentary on this. Along with the members of the MCJC, I have serious concerns about HB 1462. All college students should feel safe and protected from discriminatory speech and actions. That is not up for debate. But it is well known that the problem of hate on college campuses has historically been politicized to target some kinds of protest and not others. Most recently, college students across the United States organized in support of Palestine. In response, powerful institutions and individuals who mistakenly equate criticism of Israel, a political entity, with anti-Semitism, those institutions and individuals have worked very hard to influence university responses, insisting that Jewish students are threatened by criticism of Israel and support of Palestinians, despite the fact that Jewish students are involved in and often leading these protests. One result has been suppression, often violent, aimed largely at Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian students, justified by the kinds of seemingly neutral policies that this bill codifies. Indeed, currently, the Trump administration is trying to deport pro-Palestinian international students and urging universities to help identify them. We fear that this legislation will embolden those who would support these and comparable discriminatory actions. I'm almost done. We must enforce our university's existing and comprehensive anti-discrimination policies and procedures, but it's unnecessary to introduce additional legislation.
Thank you, sir.
Unless
Appreciate
the intent.
Appreciate your testimony. Any additional any questions for this panel? No questions. You're going to make it to your bill after all. Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Have a good day. Thanks for your advocacy. All right. Let's move to the Michael Rosenblum.
You sure did.
Sia Silmi, Catherine Kretler, Reem Azam, and Khadija Abdallah. I think I got that. 5 panelists. So if you're here, come on up, and you can just go right down the line. And yes, sir, you can start.
Great. Thank you, everyone. My name is Michael Rosenblum. I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. I'm here today in my individual capacity, and the views do not necessarily represent those of Johns Hopkins University. I'm Jewish. I also want to note that the written testimony that I submitted is endorsed by the Johns Hopkins University chapter of the American Association of University Professors, so not representing just me, but many professors. And we all strongly oppose this bill, HB 1462. And I will just speak as on behalf of myself, so anti-Semitism is real. Islamophobia is real. Both are terrible. But there's no evidence that this bill will do anything to reduce either of these. It will restrict rights. What it will do is restrict rights to free speech and protest in a time when that is more important than ever. In particular, it's designed to suppress criticism of US policy and Israel policy. It's designed to suppress nonviolent student activists speaking out about the devastation caused by sustained military attacks on Palestinians. And please don't muzzle our students and faculty. Last month was Black History Month, and I had the pleasure of reading to my children about amazing civil rights leaders, famous protests. Many students were involved in those civil rights protests. Many brave protesters went where they were told not to go. And sadly, that legacy is at risk from many directions. But this bill's restricting student free speech and protest would be directly opposed to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Barnes and Vice Chair Chang. My name is Katie Kretler, and I'm on the faculty of St. John's College, just across the street. As someone deeply committed to liberal education, I am strongly opposed to this bill. Passing by the problem of money, a small college cannot afford more security, especially not right now. This bill fosters an antagonistic relationship between students and other students, and students vis-a-vis the administration. It creates a disharmony that will be displayed on every college website as policy and be manifest in police presence at gatherings. This runs contrary to the educational mission. The college prizes our sense of community, and we don't want to manage conversations students are having amongst themselves and in the larger community. At St. John's, a tight-knit, tiny community with about 400 students, attempting to squash expressive activities, an Orwellian notion if ever I heard one, is not only inimical to education, it's impractical. The gray zone between a large conversation on the quad and a protest is impossible to maintain. If individual harassment occurs, there's already laws on the books addressing that. Burdening students with forms to fill out means people with disfavored views will be caught up in technicalities, further chilling the speech atmosphere, which at our college, as throughout the US, is in less than robust health. We can't risk shutting down healthy dialogue. If colleges are required to accept anonymous complaints, if we at our small college make anonymous complaints a normal response to political expression, are we not discouraging students from having a serious civil conversation about the issues? College is often the place where we first encounter views contrary to our own, where we, to paraphrase St. John's mission, are freed from our own prejudice and unexamined opinion. That's what my mother cherished most about her university education, and it's what I hope to uphold in my college.
2 minutes is over. Go ahead. We try to let people conclude when they hear the bell, but if they keep going, we have to stop. Go ahead. Do you want to testify?
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Reem Azam, and I am here on behalf of the human rights organization Justice for All, urging you to oppose House Bill 1462, a bill that threatens not only free speech, but also fundamental human rights on Maryland campuses. While there is rising hate that needs to be addressed, this bill structure mirrors global efforts to suppress dissent, particularly from marginalized voices. This bill would erode academic freedom, a core human right, by discouraging open debate on urgent issues. The reporting mechanisms encourage universities to suppress controversial discussions, mirroring state-driven censorship tactics seen in authoritarian regimes. The vague and weaponizable complaint process could be used to silence students based on ideological disagreements, creating an environment of fear and self-censorship. Particularly problematic is the lack of definitions for both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and I urge you all to please look into those definitions. There are 3 definitions: the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism, and the Nexus Document on Anti-Semitism. So I strongly urge you all to look into those. HB 1462 also restricts the right to protest, violating international human rights protections for freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, Articles 19 and 20 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Historically, student movements have been at the forefront of human rights advocacy, from South African anti-apartheid protests to racial justice activism in the United States. Maryland must not set a precedent that normalizes repression under a pretext that on the surface appears positive. May I finish? At a time when student activism is being criminalized across the United States, Maryland must defend and not suppress the right to dissent. This bill legitimizes censorship and weakens democratic values. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Khadija Abdullah. I'm a UMBC student, and I strongly oppose House Bill 1462. While this bill claims to promote accountability and anti-discrimination for everyone, it only further entrenches the selective enforcement of speech restrictions that already exist on our campuses. Last year, my university introduced a vague and strict interim time, place, and manner policy that has made all forms of student advocacy nearly impossible. For example, I recently wore a shirt and silent protest against Lockheed Martin at our career fair, only to be closely monitored by 5 Campus Life staff members for the entire 3 hours that I silently stood. This ridiculous surveillance is becoming common across campuses in America where students peacefully protest. We regularly face administrative roadblocks, constant meetings with admin, censorship, disciplinary threats, increased police presence, student conduct charges, some even suspension, expulsion, police raids, dorm raids, and more authoritative behavior from our universities that claim to promote civic engagement and social justice. Despite the recognition of historic student-led protests, such as those against South African apartheid and the famous university sit-ins during the civil rights movement, our own protests are treated as less legitimate. The hypocrisy is glaring. Speech is only protected when it aligns with the views of those in charge. American universities should be places for open dialogue where students can stand in solidarity with global justice movements. However, this bill would give institutions a legal framework to further silence politically or financially inconvenient viewpoints, using policy enforcement as a tool of censorship and attacking our First Amendment rights. If this bill were truly designed to protect students, it would address the overreach and crackdowns I've already described, not grant more authority to institutions that have already proven bias. I urge you to reject House Bill 1462 and defend academic integrity and the constitutional freedoms that are fundamental to our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm, for the life of me, trying to find out where it says that free speech is hated in here or halted. Can any of you explain to me where it says free speech will be shut down?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think anyone has said that it hates free speech, but the provisions in the bill almost force administrations of universities and college campuses.
Which provisions in the bill?
I'd have to look back over the provisions to see precisely, but there are provisions. Yeah, I'd have to look and get back to you.
When you see peaceful protest, my mind went back to my precious Johns Hopkins University. And when I saw that, that was not a peaceful protest. When I watch television and see peaceful protests blocking Jewish students from going into their college, blocking, that is not peaceful speech. That is not. When I looked at University of Maryland last spring, and I saw my college that we love and we support, we spend a lot of money, and that place was a wreck. I don't see anything where peaceful protest was there. I better stop. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other questions for this panel?
I'm sorry, may I just quickly address the point?
Okay.
I just want to provide you guys a resource. So there is an independent, impartial, and international profit organization that collects data on violent conflict and protests in all countries and territories. So they did a study, and they found that, you know, that 97% of these college protests have been peaceful. So there has been, unfortunately, a mischaracterization in the media, unfortunately, of these protests, but I think there's a great deal of testimony from Jewish students who, again, have been at the forefront of leading these protests, speaking about how they have been peaceful, positive environments. I think it's important to look at all the evidence that's out there. But yes, hate is real, and I can speak as a mother. There is not a day that I'm not terrified for my college-age children. I've been terrified since October 7th, especially because on October 14th, a Palestinian-American 6-year-old was stabbed 26 times. And you had the 3 students from Vermont who were also, attacked, as attempted murder. And so there's been a great deal of hate crimes, and there's no doubt that there's a problem. But I think we really need to look at the definitions of anti-Semitism. And I know that the ADL has been pushing the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. I do want to say that prior to this current climate that we're in November of 2022, 128 scholars asked the UN not to adopt that definition of anti-Semitism. So they have leading experts of anti-Semitism and leading Jewish academics at Israeli, European, UK, and US universities who are criticizing this definition, and I'm going to use their words. They said that it's been hijacked to protect Israel from international criticism. They've also said that it is divisive and polarizing. They've also said that it restricts legitimate criticism of Israel and harms the fight against anti-Semitism.
I think we're getting a little far afield from the question the delegate answered. I understand you want us to look at the definition of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Can I
Is it defined in the bill?
Student?
Is it minimum, is it defined in the bill?
No.
Is anti-Semitism?
It's not, that's a problem, and that is actually one of the problems, so, I mean.
I understand. Thank you for answering my question.
I think that needs to be.
Delegate Mangione.
Addressed, because if it's not, then it will limit free speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I think this kind of to your point, but I have to the bill sponsor, defend him here because it clearly says violence, harassment, and intimidation are what I think he's trying to get at. And I understand that there's free speech concerns. However, I also just go by what I've seen. And if 97% were peaceful, then that's great. You're not actually saying that they're going to take 97% of the peaceful protests. I mean, it seems like some of the testimony is saying that that peaceful part is no longer to be allowed. And that's what I think Delegate Metzger was trying to say. Where does it say that? And my question would be very simple to the bill sponsor. The clear language, violent, harassment, intimidation, you're not saying that is something, and maybe somebody addressed it because they did say maybe that's already on the books, but clearly you would be against violence, harassment, and intimidation in any protest.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, the time, place, and manner policies at my university currently also say that they're against violent protests, et cetera. I mean, I stood with a shirt about Lockheed Martin, and that was considered violent enough that I had 5 adults trying to get me to leave for 3 hours, and they asked the Lockheed Martin officials, are they okay? Do they feel comfortable? So, I mean, this is like, it doesn't need to blatantly say we're against free speech for us to read between the lines and look at what universities have already been doing to us. I was at the protests at UMD. I was at the protests at Johns Hopkins. I was at the protests at GW. None of them were nonviolent. We read poetry and ate Palestinian food. I mean, none of them were violent. We literally read poetry and ate Palestinian food. It was, I was with Jewish students, Christian students. It's.
May I add to?
And yeah, and that's up to the chairman, but I just wanted to say, I mean, some of the things I've seen, I mean, there was a reason, in my opinion, that some of the top presidents of these Ivy League institutions in the whole country all stepped down due to a lack of response to I would say, was some out of control anti-Semitism on campus. And they, I mean, it was Harvard, I think it was University of Pennsylvania, Columbia, they all stepped down, those, I mean, big time positions, and it was a lack of response. I think that's what the delegate in good faith who sponsored the bill is trying to get at, and not an aspect of trying to deny your right to free speech. But again, I respect the challenge of balancing free speech with harassment, for example. Violence is violence, we all know what violence is. Or harassment, I believe, is harassment, but when it comes to intimidation, now, a sign might not be intimidation, but if it's a sign that says, hang all Jewish people, or we need to have another Holocaust, which we have seen, I mean, is that really what we want on our college campuses?
It isn't.
And vice versa.
It isn't, and I think there are already laws on the books that address exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
What this bill is trying to do is to preemptively, I think, chill this, any kind of assembly or any kind of expressive activity. So it's not that we would be against the law about harassment that are already on the books in Maryland, not at all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I
Any
may
other
disagree,
questions
but
for the
thank you,
panel?
Mr. Chair, and thank you for your.
Thank you, Delegate Mangione. Any other questions for this panel? Thank you all for being
may I
with
add one?
No, sir, I think
Okay,
we've
that's
answered
fine.
the questions. I appreciate it, though. Thank you all for being here to express your views and your advocacy. We have a few more witnesses, so we'll let them clear out. Jay Ramos, Mary Ella Jordak, Dara Johnson, and then we do have 3 virtual witnesses after that. So you all can come on up and begin.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Barnes and committee members. My name is Jal Ramos. I live in District 45, and I'm delivering testimony from Jewish Voice for Peace Action, and I also understand hate, so I una boricua. JVPA is a national grassroots Jewish organization in support of Palestinian rights, with chapters in Baltimore, the DC metro area, and College Park. We are opposed to HB 1462, which would mandate policies on campuses that have been applied across the country in biased ways against nonviolent student activists speaking out in solidarity with Palestine. Time, place, manner restrictions have been used to severely punish minor technical violations and create confusing processes that intimidate students from exercising their rights. Some Maryland campuses do already have such policies. Some already have been misused, and mandating them statewide is the wrong direction. Requirements that security or police be involved in political protests deemed disruptive will also serve to intimidate students and put them at risk, when de-escalatory methods can be more appropriate and effective. The mandate to allow anonymous complaints of harassment or intimidation can be and has been used to lodge baseless complaints to intimidate political opponents. This bill was modeled after Ohio's June 2024 bill, HB 606, or the Campus Act, which it shares part of its title and a lot of its text. Why is Maryland taking model legislation on higher ed from GOP-controlled Ohio? The structure, tactics, and timing of this bill link it to repressive policies at campuses across the country in response to pro-Palestine anti-war activism. This is not a time we can afford to waver on political expression. Yesterday, President Trump posted on Truth Social threatening to withhold federal funding from universities which allowed protests, to imprison and deport so-called agitators, and to expel and arrest students. We need Maryland to be resisting this repressive agenda. What we need most is higher ed, I'm almost done. It's higher ed campuses to be centers of vigorous democratic political expression and protest. This bill is in the wrong direction. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for concluding. You're up.
Hi, my name is Mariella Jordak. I'm here today in opposition of HB 1462. I will say that from the outside looking in, this bill's general intention to combat discrimination and hate-based violence on college campuses has deep merit. It is a common sense agreement for most Marylanders that all students should learn in a safe environment that fosters both growth and challenge alongside their peers. However, anything deeper than a surface level exploration of this bill imparts grave concerns that this will further weaponize and create new avenues for the policing of the free speech of college students. After both supporting and engaging with students conducting on-campus, and I will say peaceful, protests within the DMV over the last several years, as well as my own campus activism in the years before that, there is always an overwhelming sense of fear that the students already have in regards to police and their on-campus administration retaliating, and especially in regards to pro-Palestinian, anti-genocide activism that we've seen across the state and across the nation. There has been a very clear power imbalance that leaves students vulnerable to undue and overzealous punishment and incorrectly conflates uncomfortability with hate. These policies may seem neutral in essence, but would serve to target the students who are advocating for racial justice, human rights, and other causes that are critical of government or institutional laws and policies. This right to criticize government actions is one of the most fundamental protections provided by the First Amendment. Efforts to combat intimidation and hate on campus are precious and important, but if they are only delivered while infringing on students' constitutional rights to free speech and assembly, then we are not creating the right environment for our students. Instead of advancing campus safety, HB 1462 would inadvertently foster an environment of censorship and repression. Students deserve policies that protect both their right to free speech and their safety, and it is unfortunate that HB 1462 does not seek to do both. As such, I urge the committee to make an unfavorable report, and in doing so, seek an alternative way for a safer, more secure environment for the youth across our state to continue the time-honored and deeply patriotic act of dissent.
Good evening, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. My name is Dara Johnson, and I am the Interim Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Maryland, here to voice our opposition to HB 462. So although we definitely share in the goal of protecting all students from discrimination and related harm, this bill may unfortunately work against that by opening the door to overbroad restrictions on expressive activity provided by the required time, place, and manner policies this bill provides. Likewise, we are worried by the potential chilling effect of both the imposed pathway for law enforcement escalations and required designation of a monitoring administrator. From the free speech movement of the 1960s to demonstrations that are still ongoing against the ongoing genocide in Gaza, political protests are a staple of the free exchange of ideas that undergirds higher learning in campus life. As there certainly may be some rules that are needed to ensure expressive activity can freely and safely take place, many schools already have policies limiting the time, place, and manner of such activity. However, such policies still cannot infringe on applicable rights to free expression. As written way back in 1937 by Justice Cardoza, the First Amendment is the matrix, the indispensable condition of nearly every other form of freedom. Serious harm can result when this essential right is not protected, as demonstrated by a preliminary injunction recently ordered against the University of Maryland College Park in a pending federal case challenging restrictions it opposed regarding an interfaith vigil organized by Students for Justice in Palestine. Such preliminary injunctions are only allowed when there will be an irreparable harm if the challenged actions are allowed to persist. Even unpopular speech is still protected, and unfortunately this bill lacks sufficient safeguards to ensure that resulting policies would not impose prior or direct restraints on such free expression. So with that, we urge an unfavorable report on this bill.
Thank you. I'm curious about the time, place, and manner. I have the ACLU here, so I have experts on time, place, and manner and constitutional law, so that's helpful for the committee. I mean, if they post it, I mean, the universities have time, place, and manner processes and procedures, as you've articulated. If they post it, wouldn't that help the ACLU if it's overreaching or unconstitutional, actually challenge that and bring an action?
Thank you for your question. And the concern is really not just about what's written in the plain language, but about the application of these policies. So as with the case that I mentioned against the University of Maryland, the concern was not necessarily what was written, but how it was imposed upon the students, how their authorization to hold this vigil was revoked, and then all expressive activities on that day, which October 7th, were banned because of concerns that they had received from the wider public about this protest taking place, this vigil taking place, and the court seeing that as insufficient because when you have a limited public forum, which is the University of Maryland College Park as a public university is considered a limited public forum, it is required to uphold strict scrutiny. So when you're considering whether there has been a First Amendment violation, you have to consider whether that the policies that have been applied in a way that is either content neutral or if not, is at least viewpoint neutral, is also narrowly tailored to the compelling interest there. So to those security interests, educational interests, and also that there are alternative channels that for communication that are open. And the court found in this case, in considering whether a preliminary injunction was appropriate, that had not been achieved, that even though these security interests were definitely present, that it was not the wholesale restriction of the ability to hold that vigil was not enough to outweigh what was being violated there under the First Amendment.
So it went forward.
Yes, it went forward without a hitch. Everything was cool.
It's just still a little confusing to me because the bill doesn't prescribe how it's administered, and we can't do that. We're legislators. It just says post it. So, but that's okay. We're not judiciary. I don't want to get into a colloquy. I'm still just a little confused. Are there other? Delegate Edelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that explanation as well. I have to say, as a lawyer in appropriations, we don't always get to analyze the First Amendment, so that was very enjoyable for me. I just wanted to ask you, from the ACLU perspective, it sounds like what you're saying is that you understand and agree with the underlying intent of this bill, but you're concerned with some of the provisions in the bill that might be interpreted by the universities in a way that will impact free speech, right, in the First Amendment.
Yeah, so I would say generally, just in terms of any bill that might seek to address discrimination, we are aligned with that. That is definitely our jam. But however, we are concerned, even in the application of this bill, as has been mentioned by others, the work group that is convened under this bill in its title specifically names anti-Semitism and Islamophobia as the primary focuses. And because those terms specifically are so politically wrought, especially at this time, that there is a concern about what is the intent, how this will be applied per that guidance that's provided.
So why are you here in opposition as opposed to favorable with amendments?
So our opposition here is because of the overall issue with the restriction on speech. So as my testimony spoke to, that is our primary concern. Right now, I know that it was mentioned that amendments have been offered. We haven't seen them yet, but definitely are willing to consider.
Has the ACLU proposed any?
We have not.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. It's very important. Your advocacy and being here with us is very important. We do have a favorable virtual witness. We take our virtual witnesses at the end, so let's take the favorable Taylor Faust. You can pull him or her up. Taylor, welcome. You have 2 minutes.
I'm good to speak now?
Yes.
Perfect. Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee, my name is Taylor Faust. Hold on, sorry about that. My name is Taylor Faust, and I'm a junior at the University of Maryland. I never imagined that in 2025, I would be here pleading with lawmakers to protect me from hate on a college campus. I'm testifying today in strong support of House Bill 1462 because as a Jewish student, I've experienced anti-Semitism firsthand and have watched my university struggle to address the growing hate. Every day, I walk onto campus and see flyers or chalked messages, some of which calling Jews settlers who need to go home and demand an intifada revolution. I have sat in a classroom where my peers, directed at me, claim that Jews always play the victim. During student government elections, a list was posted at UMD with every Jewish applicant's name highlighted because Jewish students, quote, do not align with the same human rights beliefs, end quote. Many comments have also been made on social media, such as, quote, good luck, you're going to need it, end quote. The University of Maryland has failed to effectively condemn or address these incidences. To this day, hateful flyers are still being distributed, protests continue, and Jewish students remain targets of harassment. No one should feel safe on their own campus. No meaningful action has been taken. Jewish students, including myself, feel unheard and unsafe. This is why House Bill 1462 is critical, because it requires universities to adopt and enforce real anti-hate and anti-discrimination policies, ensure transparency in reporting hate incidences, and strengthen coordination with law enforcement when students feel threatened. Everyone deserves to feel safe on their campus. Every student should know that the institution they attend will stand up against hate. HB 1462 will ensure colleges are required to take action. Vote in favor of HB 1462 to protect all students on Maryland's campuses who've been told that their identity makes them a target. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for your advocacy. Questions for this witness? Okay, Taylor, great to see you. Thanks for being with us. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
We have two virtual, thank you. We have two virtual witnesses signed up unfavorable. So if we can pull those witnesses up, please. Mr. Ali, welcome. Former delegate, Saqib Ali, good to see you. You have 2 minutes, sir. Mr. Ali, Saqib, you're on. Oh, are you running the YouTube and behind us, perhaps? So you need to turn that off if that's what's happening.
I have.
You need to turn your YouTube off and get live. We're going to start your testimony now.
Yep.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you. Am I good? Thank you, Chairman.
You're good.
Barnes.
You're on. 2 minutes.
Sure. I just want to correct the record. I've heard some of the supporters of this legislation bring up some things which I think really need to be corrected. The BJC said, I think the Baltimore Jewish Council, they said that they worked closely with the Montgomery College because there was a movie that was slated to be played there. And they didn't like the movie. And they, in fact, if you look up this incident, they had the movie canceled, the movie showing at a public college. And they're saying that, hey, if we have this bill, we would be in a much stronger position regarding this kind of action. Well, I don't think cancellation of a movie that you don't like is actually something you should be proud of. It actually seems to be a violation of the First Amendment at a public school. The other thing we heard is that stickers, some of the dorms at University of Maryland, stickers have been placed on Jewish kids' doors. So let me explain what actually that's all about. Israel has a policy of settling the West Bank and evicting Palestinian residents, especially in East Jerusalem. So as a protest, some students go into the dorms and they post these eviction notices on all the students' doors to make them feel how Palestinians feel. This is not something that's targeted at Jews. So when they say that Jewish students' doors were plastered with stickers, well, I think that's not telling the whole story. Similarly, we heard one of the students saying that he feels bad.
Okay, thank you, sir. You can conclude. Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't see any. All right. Well, I want to thank both sides for a very civil and productive discourse. We're adjourned. They're not on. They're not on. We don't have anyone else waiting in the queue. So thank you so much. We're adjourned.